You have it? Good morning. No. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Happy Friday. So I have laryngitis. I've had it all week, and today's the first day I speak. And so, really? I thought we were friends. Okay. Happy Friday to you, sir. Anyway, so for that reason, I'm going to ask the second vice chair to act on my behalf today. I'll physically be here. I'll be able to speak a little bit, but I really have to be super careful because my voice is just like not with me today. So I'm going to turn it over to the vice chair.
Great. More than happy to help out here. So good morning. The March 22nd Board of Directors meeting is called to order. First, I'd like to ask our interpreters to explain how to access interpretation. Please go ahead.
Announcement from interpreter. To use the interpretation feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are. Click on the interpretation icon, which is the world, and select English as your language. If you are joining through the Zoom mobile app, cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipsis, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Finally, click on mute original audio to not hear the original Spanish flow in the background. Headsets are available for interpretation if you are in the meeting room. Please check out a headset from the receptionist in the lobby. Aviso por parte de la intérprete. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, favor de desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación globo terráqueo y seleccione Spanish, español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom, celular, tableta, etc., presione los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, por favor seleccione Mute Original Audio, silenciar audio original. Contamos con auriculares disponibles para el servicio de interpretación. Si se encuentra en la sala de reunión, favor de pedir auriculares con la recepcionista en el vestíbulo.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and start with a tribal acknowledgement. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the land that we call home. The tribal nations of the San Diego region has historically faced injustices. We acknowledge the harmony that existed between the land, nature, and its original peoples, who have since endured displacement, persecution, and systemic oppression. We pay our respect to the unceded territory and homelands of the 18 tribal nations in our region, the most in any county in the United States, from 4 cultural groups, the Kumeyaay Digueño, the Luceño, the Cupeño, and the Cahuilla. This land has nourished, healed, protected, and embraced them for many generations in a relationship of balance and harmony. As members of the Sandag community, we acknowledge this legacy. We aspire to learn from Indigenous traditional knowledge and experiences in undoing the injustices of the past. Now, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Francesca, can you please confirm a quorum?
Thank you, Vice Chair. We do have a quorum. Currently, the city of Chula Vista, the city of Del Mar, and the city of Vista are absent, and all other jurisdictions are represented.
Thank you so much. We will start today with non-agenda public and member comments. As a reminder, no comment shall use loud, threatening, profane, or abusive language that disrupts the orderly conduct of the meeting, and none of that will be tolerated. Any such language or any other disorderly conduct that disrupts, disturbs, or otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of the board meeting is prohibited. Per our board policy, the amount of time allotted for each verbal public comment is determined based on the number of agenda items, the complexity of those items, and the number of persons anticipated to offer comment. This allows us to hear from as many people as possible and to complete our business while we still have a quorum. I'd also like to note that today we will be concluding our board meeting at noon sharp, so that the CEO Selection Committee can conduct interviews. Also, HCD, that's Housing and Community Development from Sacramento, will be joining us today, and their team is time-bound. For these reasons, we'll be moving the consent calendar items to the end of the agenda. After non-agenda public comment, we'll begin with our RENA discussion with HCD, and then move into the draft budget item, then close session, and finally the consent calendar. Based on these factors for today's meeting, each member of the public will be allowed 1 minute for their comments. Francesca, please go ahead and with the non-agenda public comments.
Thank you. So at the top of the meeting, I'll be calling on the first 5 folks who provided speaker slips to me, and then we will take the remaining public commenters at the end of the agenda. So Mike Singleton will be first if you'd like to step up to the podium, and Mike will be followed by Byron Ross.
Good morning. I'm here to discuss Normal Street Promenade project. In 2014, a lot of us in the community got together to develop concepts for Normal Street Promenade. And the community has invested a great deal of time in this. There's been resources that have been committed for this project for many, many years and no benefits yet from that money. And the money value has been decreasing while the project has dragged on for quite a period of time. I would suggest that you're at about the last point to take advantage of getting the most out of your money. Although there's still a lot of building that's going on, most all of that was started with low interest rates. And with the future interest rates dropping soon, there's a good chance there's going to be a lot more construction. And that level of construction equates to higher bids that you would likely have to have on this project. They always say that the best use of public money is to encourage investment of private investment itself. And the new Hillcrest Cultural District is really waiting for this project. The project has established great partnerships.
Thank you. Your time has expired.
Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Byron Ross, and Byron will be followed by Trent St. Louis.
Good morning, Byron Ross. I am a Hillcrest Business Association board member and the Uptown Community Parking District board member. Really appreciate your time here. I'm also, like Mike, here to encourage your support for the Hillcrest Eastern Bikeway project. This project has been in works for many, many years, and it is definitely going to be something that will benefit all of Hillcrest as a transportation hub. It'll create protected bike lanes throughout Hillcrest and a large space for the neighborhood. Pride Plaza at the base of the Hillcrest Pride flag and provide a net gain of 22 parking spaces. So please help us and support Hillcrest in pursuing a brighter future for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Trent St. Louis, who will be followed by Ben Nichols.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for hearing us. I'm Trent St. Louis. I'm a 30-year resident of Hillcrest. I work, live, and volunteer in the community. I love my community. And we're simply asking that you support moving forward and releasing any delays of the Hillcrest Normal Street Promenade. We really, really need an outdoor space for our area. I'm in touch and have a pulse of the community in which I live and work. And as Hillcrest continues to grow, we are desperately in need of this beautiful new promenade, which apparently has been approved. The monies are set aside. It's ready for groundbreaking, and we've been constantly told there's delays. And we're asking that the delays please be released and they just move forward. I've been in Hillcrest for 30 years. This has been talked about for 30 years, but now we have the money. We're ready to go and do the groundbreaking. So please, please, let's move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ben Nichols, who will be followed by Jerry Treffel.
Hello, my name is Benjamin Nichols, and I'm the Executive Director of the Hillcrest Business Association. We represent 1,600 small businesses and property owners in Hillcrest. I'm here to register my concern about the continued delays around the Eastern Bikeway project, which includes the Normal Street Promenade and Pride Plaza. This project has been delayed again and again for years. We're again told the project is on hold or has been paused. This community has worked for many years and devoted millions of dollars to this effort. We are trying to be partners with SANDAG on this effort. But now we're told there's a new staff person, or there's a legal issue, or wait till the meeting next Tuesday. No, actually we meant the following Tuesday. It just feels like red tape. It feels like we're getting wrapped up in red tape, and we really would love to see this project move forward. There's supposed to be a groundbreaking in July for Pride, and I really hope we can make that. So please move this project forward. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Jerry Tressel, and Jerry will be our final speaker for this portion of the non-agenda public comment.
Hello, I am Jerry Tressel, Executive Director for the Uptown Community Parking District. I'm here to ask for your help to get the Normal Street Promenade and Eastern Bikeway construction docks released for bid. We've overcome many obstacles with this project. The City of San Diego, our other partner, resolved issues of access, design, eminent domain, and state-held DMV issues. The Uptown Community Parking District and Hillcrest Parking Committee stepped up to resolve the budget shortfall, allocating another $3 million for a $6 million total project. That's a lot of quarters and decades worth of revenue. They put 100% of their money towards this project. What we cannot resolve is the new SANDAG project management team, and we all understand transition and staff, but we cannot understand why they will not release the docs and then continue to work on an MOU with the city for the next 90 days while those docs are out for bid. These 11th hour delays leave us holding the lurch, shaking the community's credibility. And I encourage you to just move forward, step up. $3 million is for
Your time has
SANDAG
expired.
project management.
Thank you for your comments, all of you. Thank you. Are there any member comments on non-agenda items?
Thank you, Vice Chair. We do have 6 folks left in the room and then another 6 online that we can take at the end of the meeting or now, depending on your preference.
We take those at the end of the meeting as normal. Yeah, thank you very much. So again, board members, any non-agenda public or member comments? I see none. So we'll now go on to the chair's report and she will give her report.
I'm going to give it really quickly. So I just want to say thank you to everyone for attending the board retreat and for being so engaged and for your honest dialogue. I think we had a great session and we're going to be sharing a recap soon in one of our upcoming meetings. But I want once again, thank you. And I want to say thank you to the city of Imperial Beach for being such wonderful hosts. We appreciate it. And hopefully everybody will go back and use the bike pathway and so on and so forth. The recruitment for the new CEO. Today we have 6 candidates that have been identified in the first round of interviews. We're going to be interviewing them and then from there getting a small selection, and that selection group will be interviewed by the full board in closed session at our next meeting on Friday, April 12th. And so we are on track, and we had a great group of folks who applied. So excited about that next process in terms of the CEO appointment. So anyway, last but not least, on our independent performance auditor, Courtney Ruby is excited. I'm excited that she's going to be sharing the SR 125 report. Is going to be released on Monday. And it's going to be sent to all the board members, and the report will be presented to the audit committee on Tuesday as well. And so that's an important piece of the work that she's doing, and her and her team will be providing briefings to all of us. So please be able to reach out to her directly if you have any questions. And then on May 16th is Bike Anywhere Day, and it's make sure that everybody knows about that. And it also is going to be part of our consent agenda today. So I'm hoping everyone in our communities participates in one way or another. And there's more to come from the SANDAG team on that. So with that, that concludes my update, and turn it over to the second vice chair.
Very good. Colleen, did you have anything to add to that?
Yes, thank you very much. I do have several items to report on. We've had a lot of activity over the last month that I wanted to share. So first of all, just following up on the priority that you all gave me to make sure that we are following up on all the issues related to State Route 125. So first of all, we are pleased that we're able to sign the contract with the group that will help us with the new back office system. And so we're on track to be able to have that software system up and running by the end of the year. So that's the first thing. The second are the audits. So there are 2 audits that we have now received draft from Fagan and Davis Farr. And then we do look forward to the audit that will be coming from the independent performance auditor on Monday. And once we are able to collect all of that, we will come back to you with a report on our action plan for how we're following up on all of those issues. The third piece is about the payoff and how we could pay off the debt on the State Route 125. After your last board meeting, we met with South Bay elected officials who came up with a number of suggestions for how that could be paid off. So we are looking at that right now, and we will bring back a report to you on what the different options are going forward. So that's State Route 125. We have a number of other audits, board inquiries, follow up on the board retreat that we're working on. One of the things that I wanted to bring to your attention is the report that was conducted by the Independent Taxpayer Oversight Committee. So every 3 years, the Independent Taxpayer Oversight Committee hires an outside auditor to look at how the Transnet ordinance is being implemented and the funding associated with that. The report came out and was shared with Independent Taxpayer Oversight Committee and last Friday with the Transportation Committee. And one of the key things is that we're implementing the Transnet ordinance, but we're not being really clear on exactly what we're doing, how we're doing it, and the decisions that are being made associated with that. So what I've directed the team to do, first of all, is that we need to have specifically identified staff at the agency responsible for doing that. We will share with you when this comes to the board in June that we are going to lay out, and we have shared this in some format, but it needs to be very clear. What did the ordinance call for? What have we done so far? If it's different, why is it different? And being very clear on what decisions have been made to get to that point. So that's the direction I've given our team. The budget that we will be bringing forward, this is the draft, but in the final budget, we will be setting aside specific funding to ensure that we have the staff and the resources to follow up on that. So I wanted to make that clear. There are a number of inquiries that you all have had over the last several board meetings. I think there's about 8 that we're following up on right now. Some of them Councilmember Burkholder had brought up. So I'm reviewing all of that now, and I hope to get that final package out to you either this afternoon or first part of next week so that we're really responding to your questions. And then just in terms of the board retreat, I think there's a few things that we heard from you all wanting to understand how we make decisions when we bring things forward, giving you all options, and then kind of why we're recommending what we're recommending. And then how we plan to get there. So that's feedback we're taking, and we want to make sure that we incorporate that into items that we bring to you. I think we're doing that with the regional plan. You'll see the draft budget today. We're laying out our best attempt there, but certainly this is your opportunity to provide that input to us as we move forward. We also heard from you on the importance of understanding what our stakeholders and community think about SANDAG. So we're going to be collecting that data and bringing that back to you as well. So that's kind of like administrative things that I wanted to share with you. We were in Sacramento last week and met with the agencies, all the agencies that impact the work that we do. We met with our San Diego delegation. We made a lot of progress. One of the things that we've been working on is getting the judicial streamlining for the LoSAN project. And we finally now have approval from the Office of Planning and Research to submit our application. So that was headway with the governor's office. They are making a really hard press now on the federal government to help advance our Otay Mesa East project. So that was very fruitful. The morning before we left to go to Sacramento, we were really excited about an announcement that the governor was making on reconnecting communities. And so in National City and City of San Diego, which is really kind of ground zero from where communities have been broken up by freeways, how we can bring that back together. So it's one of 3 locations in the state of California that was selected for those grant funds. So we're really excited to partner with the community on how we can bring that together. And then there's a number of other grants that we've received, federal earmarks, federal grants, and we will be talking about those more later. We did send out the press release to you all that went into descriptions of each of those. We're going to be bringing that forward also with more detail about kind of where that is in the process and what that means in terms of implementing the projects that we know are so important to all of you. So the last thing, I just wanted to comment on what we're hearing from the community about the Eastern Hillcrest Bikeway project and the Normal Heights Promenade. This is a project that we're doing in collaboration with the city of San Diego. SANDAG is helping designing the city of San Diego project into the regional bikeway project. We're really working hard on pulling together the memorandum of agreement between SANDAG and the city of San Diego so that we fully protect SANDAG and ensure that there aren't liabilities that that SANDAG takes on that should be taken on by the city of San Diego. So that's where we are in that process. We have the money, we're ready to go, and we absolutely want to implement the project as much as the community does. So that concludes my updates. Thank you so much for your patience, and I'll turn it back to the second vice chair.
Very good. Lots happened in 2 weeks, all right. So let's start on item number 10, which is the Regional Housing Needs Assessment discussion. Do we have Director Gustavo Velasquez from the State Housing and Community Development Department online?
Good morning. I'm Deputy Director Megan Kirkby. Gustavo is having some travel issues, so I think it's primarily going to be myself today. But I'm our.
Would you mind repeating your name?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm Megan Kirkby. I am our Deputy Director for Housing Policy Development at HCD. So I am the Deputy Director for all of Housing and Community Development Department. That is charged with the topics you've asked about today. So the regional housing needs assessment, the housing element process, the regional early action planning grant program as well. So you primarily work with my department on most of the things that SANDAG has to do with housing related.
Very good. Well, welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm going to turn it over right now to Colleen before we get into this important discussion.
Thank you. So we really appreciate you being here, Megan. This has been an important discussion among our board members about the regional housing needs assessment. We know work is underway at the state level to make some changes, and very, very interested in the role that regions can play and local jurisdictions can play. One of the things I'd like to lay out for the board here is maybe based on the discussion we have, your staff are prepared to combine all of that into a letter that we will follow up with Housing and Community Development on. So with that, I will turn it over to Megan to provide the presentation, or do we? Oh, we go to public comment. Should we go to public comment and then look, Chair LaCava from Regional Planning Committee? Did you want to introduce this before we go to public comment?
No, I think you've done a great job. Thank you.
Very good. Francesca, if you could please call for public comment.
Thank you very much. I did want to know, I noticed some hands still up from non-agenda public comment. So if you did not want to speak on item 10, if you could please put your hand down and I will call on you at the end of the meeting. We'll start in the room with Truth, and Truth will be followed by Mark.
Gustavo's probably having problems due to all the high density stack it packs under his watch. The most unaffordable housing, the most expensive units to ever be built in human history. In fact, under his watch, people are moving to Mexico just to survive. And just what a great report. You know, luckily I knew he was not coming, thanks to the Coronado City Council. So I'm just gonna kind of wing it because who cares about Gustavo? He doesn't even show up. We have Solana Beach that can't meet numbers. Coronado that can't meet numbers, everybody that can't meet numbers. Do you think maybe there's a problem with the numbers by chance? But I'm going to say Gustavo actually was handpicked by Obama and then later Newsom. He worked for Congreso de Latinos Unidos, which is an arm of Unidos US, which supports illegal immigration. And they're funded by Pepsi, AT&T, Amazon, Gates, Carnegie, HP, FedEx, Facebook, General Mills, whole bunch of other, Kellogg, Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, Rockefeller, whole bunch. And it's actually it started as the National Council of La Raza, the RACE, and was funded by racist Henry Ford's Ford Foundation and run by the CFR.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Our next speaker will be Mark, and Mark will be followed by Michael Brando.
Mark, housing is such a complete scam. First of all, there are shareholders, there are investors. You guys never tell the people that. They don't even know about your meeting, of course. You're lucky for that because they wouldn't put up with it. So there are people making money right off the top. I've talked to contractors that work for these companies. And I've said many times, Appy's Core could 3D print homes, like literally 1,200 square foot homes for $10,134. And you could buy 10, 20 printers. You can easily solve problems. You could print rooms that are stacked and that stack vertically or horizontally. And $12 million would do literally 12,000 of them. You wouldn't have a homeless problem at all. And you'd have had some left over to help the people from the flooding recently. But you're not trying to help people. You're trying to make money. And it's a total scam, and people shouldn't put up with it. I wish they knew about your freaking meeting.
Our next speaker will be Michael Brando, and after Michael, we'll go to the folks on Zoom, starting with the person with the phone number ending in 813.
Michael, I'm going to echo everything that Truth said about this issue. And it's interesting watching how this dovetails with what the city of San Diego is attempting and what the county of San Diego is attempting. You know, this is not about housing needs assessment. I love this language. It sounds so kind. It sounds so compassionate. It sounds so good-hearted. But yet, this is all about making money. It has nothing to do with the constitutional republic at all. And that's the big omission here. A lot of you know this in your heart. And as time goes on, more people are going to be waking up to this, asking questions, finding out who you are. And you know what? The loud, abusive language is actually the lies that go on here in relationship to this topic and to other topics. And we'll talk about Shanilo Rivera later, Mr. Luqadda.
Our next speaker will be the person ending with the phone number ending in 813, followed by the original draw. You are self-muted at the moment, so you can begin your comments whenever you'd like. I'm going to go ahead and move on. Oh, yep, go ahead.
Okay. So Sleepy Joe's in the house? Joe Luqadda? Got it. It's not the regional housing that needs assessment. It's the board, the county that needs an assessment. You guys continue to do what's best for the feds and not for the people. Your own policies are going to bite you in the behind. They probably already are. It's kind of disgusting to hear you guys speak about Newsom and getting things prepped for him when you have your own people here who are suffering. And quite frankly, a lot of them don't even have warm meals, 3 meals a day. It's really sad. It's frustrating, sad. What other words? It's fucked up.
Our next speaker will be the original draw, who will be followed by Paul the Bold.
Yep, I agree with what Consuelo was saying, that, you know, you guys need an assessment because this is a really lucrative business. So nothing's ever going to be affordable. The problem's never going to be fixed because once you fix a problem, you can't exploit it. And so we exploit the people that are sitting here and actually really need a home. I mean, people are leaving at astronomical rates, but as long as you guys give your propaganda updates like you're doing something good for the community, then you can try and save face. But people see clearly what you guys are doing, that you're miserably failing at what you're supposed to be doing. Because if you were really good at it, all the billions of dollars that you've thrown at this would stick and you'd actually fix the problem. But that, like I said, is the point. You can't do that because then you don't have a problem to fix. And you don't get to, you know, showcase as like this savior that comes in and saves the day. But when people really pay attention, they can see that all you're doing is destroying our communities rapidly.
Our next speaker will be Paul the Bold, followed by Blair Beekman, and Blair will be our final speaker on this topic.
Hi, Paula Bold. Housing needs. SANDAG is a transportation agency is defined by Government Code 101080. If you're doing a report for other people, please use current data and do not politicize the results to suit an agenda. I have noticed both of these at the Board of Supervisors. And by the way, the state is trying to usurp the city's rights to determine their own zoning under the California Constitution, Article 11, Section 5, and also make its zoning permanent. This happened in Chula Vista, although the idea was rejected for now, but don't let it happen here. Historical and social amnesia have become the organizing principles of U.S. society. This includes government-supported housing. Lies morph into the celebration of violence, and language becomes part of the machinery of social death, relegated to the sphere of consumer culture and devoid of an ethical grammar that has banished its own.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Our final speaker will be Blair Beekman. You can go ahead when you're ready.
Hi, thank you, Blair Beekman. The city of San Diego made a real important commitment a year or so ago. The community, the whole process, community advocacy, to really want to address the future of housing for the city of San Diego. I hope this item today, and it's a time that we start to make new commitments to those sort of good efforts, that we really have to be engaged in tenant rights ideas, really extremely low, very low income housing, and what I think is important, mixed income housing. We have to talk about those things more, make them a more regular part of our process. Good luck in doing that here today and into our future. And to address Prop 1, it's really questionable. It's kind of shooting ourselves in the foot, I feel. It's doing one thing and not allowing our good practices at the local level. Good luck to practice responsibly. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the public comment. I did want to note for the record as well that the city of Vista, the city of Chula Vista, and the city of Del Mar are now represented at the meeting.
Very good. Thanks, Francesca. I will now turn it over to the Deputy Director to make some remarks. Megan.
Thanks all, and thanks to the board for having us today. I'm a little sad I'm not there in person with you all today. I'm going to let Marissa give sort of the rundown of where things are at and what we've been hearing in terms of the regional housing needs assessment engagement that we've been doing, and what's leading into what we've been hearing from stakeholders, from local government, from regional government, from the academic community, leading into what recommendations we're hearing for the next cycle. And I just want to underscore that I think we're very cognizant that the San Diego region plays an important role in the process each cycle. You're the largest, the first large region to go each cycle, and I know that being first in that way, it can be stressful, and that you all are further along than your colleagues to the north, thinking about what lies ahead and how this cycle has been going for your communities. So want to be grateful for the participation you've given so far. We're hoping to share a bit with you about the status of the process and what we've been hearing, as I said, but we're available also for questions and comments from the board, and for you to share additional perspective here today. Marissa, can I pass it to you to kind of talk about where we've been and what we're hearing as sort of status of things. Thank you.
Thank you.
And please introduce yourself, Marissa. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us today. So my name is Marissa Crosby, and I have been guiding our efforts at HCD on our California's Housing Future 2040, the Next RENA initiative. So I'll just spend a couple minutes describing our initiative to improve the RENA process and methodology for the 7th cycle. And then as Megan said, we want to spend most of our time this morning hearing from you all.
It's very difficult.
Can't quite hear you very well.
Marissa, we're having trouble. Maybe you could lean closer into your mic or.
Is this microphone any better?
That is a little bit better. Is it better for you guys? No?
There's a little bit of an echo still, Marissa. I don't know if you, I don't know if maybe turning up the volume, sorry to workshop in the moment, but I don't know if turning up the volume on your computer might help. But I do think closer to the mic too is probably a good call.
Great. All right. Well, I will stick with this microphone for now. So I just want to say I'm Marissa Crosby. I have been leading our efforts at HCD on our California's Housing Future 2040, the Next RENA initiative. Great. Glad to have the thumbs up. And so, I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes describing our initiative to improve the RENA process and methodology for the 7th cycle. And then we want to spend most of our time this morning hearing from you all. So as a whole at HCD, HCD believes RENA works as the foundation to planning for housing across the state, but we've been given an opportunity by the legislature to make adjustments to better achieve our goals and better account for housing needs across California. As a result, we launched the California's Housing Future 2040 initiative about a year ago, and our soon-to-be-released report will include the changes that HCD believes are necessary to ensure that the RENA process appropriately plans for the homes that will be needed across the state by the year 2040, the year when, with RENA's staggered 8-year cycle, the last region in the state will complete the upcoming 7th RENA and housing unit cycle. And this directive stems from 2019's AB 101 to develop a recommended improved RENA process and methodology that promotes and streamlines housing development and substantially addresses California's housing shortage. So we began this initiative about a year ago with a 4-month intensive stakeholder engagement period from about mid-March to mid-July of 2023. And this intensive stakeholder engagement period consisted of a number of different types of stakeholder outreach venues, including a webinar, a public survey, a technical sounding board, outreach to council government partners such as SANDAG and others across the state, one-on-one listening sessions with state agencies and select stakeholders, and a public email inbox. Then in July, we began to summarize and synthesize all of the feedback we received and began drafting possible recommendations. So HCD is now in the process of finalizing the report with leadership and will soon deliver the report to the legislature and publish on our website. A number of themes.
Apologize, Marissa. I think I'm getting some notes that the board is still having trouble hearing you in person. So I think we'll try and just I know what Marissa's trying to get across, so we'll try and work together on this one. But apologies for the that piece of the audio thing today. And Marissa, feel free to add more. You can chat me to fill in the blanks here. But a lot of what Marissa's trying to talk about is that we've been doing an engagement process for about a year now. We're hearing a lot about ways in which the 7th cycle can continue to even grow from where the 6th cycle had been. Obviously, RENA is not everybody's favorite topic in the world, but I think some of the things we were really able to hear from the regional government community were ways we can make the process less painful. And so I think that is always something that people can kind of come around the table for is process improvements. And the pieces we were really hearing we want to that people want to keep about the process are making sure that we're planning for housing where jobs are, where people are, where transit is, away from open space, continuing the affirmatively furthering fair housing and equity principles that led into RENA, as well as really thinking more holistically about homelessness and how we reduce and end homelessness in California. Those are a big piece of the themes we've been hearing. I'm gonna pick up a few more of Marissa's talking points. Transparency, and I mean, even the public commenters mentioned this today, making sure that all the decisions that take place in the regional housing needs assessment process are very clear. And that's something I really take to heart. I'm our deputy director, but once upon a time when I first came to HCD, this was actually part of my initial portfolio 8 years ago when I came on board. And my predecessor basically conveyed that as the number one principle of importance of being the steward of the regional housing needs process is really making it very clear how decisions are made, preventing things from being arbitrary in the process. But I think what we've heard from stakeholders throughout the process is we're not hitting that mark yet, that things need to be clearer. Something that we heard again and again throughout the process is housing doesn't stop at the allocation and assessment part of the housing planning process. A lot of our stakeholders are eager to think about how that allocation leads into the housing element process or the local housing planning process and improvements that can be made there. So I do want to ensure that those things are things that we've heard and we're working on figuring out how to incorporate. I will say, it can feel like the 7th cycle is right around the corner, but it is the SANDAG region will be, the housing elements will be due April 2029. We're working backwards from that to think about 2 to 3 years before that to make sure that we have a really clear 7th cycle regional housing needs assessment process in place.
I'm sorry to cut you off. I have a quick question because we're like really short on time. This is Chair Vargas.
Okay, I apologize. That is my last point I was going to make is like that's the timing we're at, and that we're working backwards to think about where you guys need to be by 2026 going into the next cycle.
No,
so
I appreciate that. But just so you know, we're all deep into this and we have a lot of questions. So let me go ahead and turn it over to the second vice chair. She can ask you questions and then the rest of the folks.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Megan. I really appreciate you being here to hear from us. We local electeds in this room represent 3.3 million people in SANDAG region. As you pointed out, the first region to go through each of these cycles. I think that all of us in the room can readily agree that we need more affordable housing and that we should all do our part to provide it. I also think that we would all readily agree that RHNA could use some adjustments. So let me share some suggestions and a few questions for you. So my first point is that I'd like to ask that the overall number of housing units required in the 6th cycle, which is 2.5 million, be revisited. And I know you're looking at the 7th cycle reforms, but the 6th cycle needs to be looked at. The overall number in the past never really concerned me because we know we need a whole lot of housing. And so I just let it go by. But we would, of course, plan and encourage housing as much as we could. But now that SB 35 and SB 423 turn RHNA into an obligation to produce your RHNA numbers or else proposition, instead of its original intent as a tool to plan for housing, this number does need more scrutiny. And in fact, the California State Auditor, Michael Tilden, found some issues with the process and recommended some fixes. No one seems to know where that stands. And I'm wondering if you could, at a later time, please provide us access to what adjustments the state auditor asked you to make and what progress has been made toward those. And will there be an adjustment to the overall 6th cycle number and when? And could you also please show us your work as to how you came up with 2.5 million, that number? I just don't understand how the 6th cycle more than doubled from the 5th when our population increased by only a few percentage points. Pent-up demand, of course, is one thing. We all know we have decades-long housing shortage, but to cram the fix into one 8-year cycle seems extreme and unrealistic. And in fact, our economists recently told us that our allocation of 171,000 plus units by 2029 or 2028 or 29, he said by 2050, we'll have 200,000. So there's a little disconnect with what we're looking at here in the region and what you're looking at for us in the region. So what is HCD going to do at the halfway mark in the 6th cycle, which comes to us the middle of next year? SB 35 and 423 mandate that cities, so every city around this table, you have to build 50% of your RHNA allocation in each income category by June of next year, or thereafter, all multifamily housing is approved over the counter with no public input. This in the face of the fact that cities do not build housing, developers build housing. And it's a fact that cities cannot force landowners to build housing. nor can cities force developers to pull permits for their approved projects. So the approach of making cities which do not build housing responsible for something they don't do and can only influence, and then punish them if they don't do what they don't do, seems flawed at best, which is why I don't see that many cities will meet that halfway mark number. So what then? Is HCD really going to allow developers to determine the future of our entire state instead of elected representatives? It seems to me that RHNA should go back to being a planning process with emphasis on good faith efforts, not on punishing us for something that by charter or general law we don't do. And the second point is that we had a presentation here at SANDAG in the executive committee a while ago, and we were told that in your reform efforts, you were looking at the question of, are there ways to improve RHNA to further community development and anti-displacement goals? That is a really, really great question. And the answer is yes, it is funding. RHNA needs to come with funding. And there are a few reasons for this. Because if our goal is really to create enough housing that's affordable to more people in an equitable manner, we need government funding. And you, as the deputy director and your staff, are the best people to ask for it. Why do we need this funding? Well, I don't know if anyone has done the math in this room, but for my little city, I'm in Solana Beach, we're 3.4 square miles. We would have to come up with over 12 times our general fund to pay for the bottom two categories, the affordable categories. Statewide, $1 million of that 2.5 is affordable. That means $750 billion that cities certainly don't have. So, and then I'd like to point out that the little government money that there is available is competitive. And I don't know about many of the cities around this table that are smaller like mine, but we don't win these, we don't do well in these competitions, because at the beach, we're hearing that our units are too expensive and that they could get more units inland, which is very true. And unfortunately, though, we lost a 100% affordable project because of this, not having that last bit of money. I also know that the state is having trouble. We've got a looming, probably $100 million deficit, and they don't seem to have the money then for RHNA either. So since no one's got the funding to subsidize the affordable units, how are cities to meet these targets? It appears that what the state has done is to hand it over to the private market to provide the funding. To solve a social problem, the state is relying on for-profit developers, largely building luxury units and giving them a fair number of perks through legislation at the same time. But there's a problem with this, and that is that the way that the private market pays for the subsidies for the affordable units, they don't take it out of their profits. They are raising the rents on the market rate units. And this creates then another problem, because those inflated market rate rents become the new comp for the area, causing landlords to rethink renewing the leases on their long-term tenants. The landlords see how much money that these new places are commanding, and they went in on that action. And so the cycle goes. New development leads to displacement, not just from demolition, but from the new area median rent rising. My city is heartbreakingly losing seniors, people of color, students, and our own kids and working class families. And so my city, we're becoming wealthier and we're becoming less diverse. And I know it's not what everybody intended about this process, but it is real life, and it is, I'm going to say again, heartbreaking to see what's happening. The way to improve RHNA to further community development and anti-displacement is government money. Give us money so the overall housing market stops inflating. For-profit developers are causing rental rate inflation, and this is why our affordable housing crisis is getting worse, not better. The profit motive is winning out over social good. The second reason we need funding is that otherwise a city's only tool to realize more affordable homes in their city is their inclusionary policy, if you happen to have one. We happen to have one, it's 15%. So for us to fulfill our two affordable categories at the bottom, not even considering the moderate, we would have to build 4,200 new housing units, 15% of which equal those two bottom numbers. Currently, our city has 6,300 housing units. If you put two residents in each of those 4,200, that's 8,400 new people. So we're adding 65% to our population and 67% to our housing stock. It's not realistic, and we would definitely be talking infrastructure at that point. So yes, funding, adequate funding for RHNA is the only way to stop displacement and see affordable units sooner than waiting 40 years for market rate housing to trickle down to be affordable. Because what we're seeing in my city and in many coastal cities is new one bedrooms going for $6,000 a month. New townhomes are going for 2.5 to 3 million. It's going to take years, decades for those to trickle down to become affordable. Next to last point. If we can talk housing elements, you mentioned that at the end, my request would be that HCD give jurisdictions objective criteria to meet in their housing element to achieve certification. I've spoken to electeds throughout the state, and there doesn't seem to be a uniformity to what standards and criteria you want to see or how certain pieces of legislation are interpreted. Additionally, when we submit our housing element and you guys can't get to it for a while, please create a category to put us in so that we're not subject to builder's remedy. I'd like to work together to find solutions so that it's not such an uncertain, expensive, arduous, and lengthy process for cities and HCD. Which brings me to my final suggestion, and that is that COGs like SANDAG need to be allowed to adjust their methodology mid-cycle. We should be able to adjust the distribution of housing units among cities and allow jurisdictions to trade for housing, especially near job centers. Additionally, HCD should review what's happening in the economy and at least at mid-cycle adjust their overall housing needs number to account for real-world market conditions, as well as right now, for instance, we know our population is declining. An adjustment in the overall number is warranted. In conclusion, please recognize the realities that market forces have on what gets built, that economic cycles, cost of construction, labor, population changes, all must be considered in the RHNA numbers. Unless subsidized, developers are not going to build when their profits aren't high enough. Period. It's about profit to them, nothing more. If subsidized, they're more likely to see those profits and build, and we'd get more affordable housing. RHNA needs to go back to being a planning process with flexibility to adjust to changing conditions and with funding, not retribution or punishment. Thank you for considering my comments as they are truly coming from a place of wanting more affordable housing in my community, not from not wanting to build. But we are seeing it backfiring. And again, the face of my community is changing dramatically because of what we're seeing with a lot of these mandates. So now I will go to my colleagues on the board and call on Councilmember Gasterland.
Lisa, I want to echo every single thing you just said. Ditto for Del Mar, except that Del Mar is 1.6 buildable square miles of land. And really the ratios of our towns, we're in this together and it's a problem. With density bonus law, which is what is depended on to build affordable in a fully built out coastal town like Carlsbad, Solana Beach, Del Mar, Encinitas, all of us, Imperial Beach, is density bonus law. So what does density bonus law mean? It means a disaster for our towns. 20 units per acre is what we're doing in Del Mar. The density bonus law is 30 units per acre. 30 units on 1 acre with 4 affordable. This is just plain old wrong. It's ethically and morally wrong. Our fully built out coastal cities will melt away before us. We're upzoning our entire downtown for 20 units per acre as we speak. I objected to it on Monday because I wanted to know what exactly we could do to hold our local coastal program steady. There's very little. Developers, when they use the density bonus law, they get waivers. The waivers they get are height, FAR, more square feet, which is needed when you're building 15 units on a half acre, and coverage. So if we hold height so that we can see the ocean from our downtown, one of the reasons people come to Del Mar or Carlsbad or Encinitas and so on, then it's breadth, lot coverage. We're going to have a wall of building from one end to the other of each of our downtowns. None of us are on track, as far as I know, to fulfill 50% of our RHNA by the halfway point. That means discretionary review will go out the window. The developers can effectively do what they want. Our planning departments will be challenged to find a way to say no. And their only way to say no is if they can prove to the developer that, in fact, the developer does have a way to build economically feasibly. And the developer knows their numbers very, very well. When buy right kicks in, developers will use the density bonus waivers on zone code to build higher and wider. We need to aim to build the housing that people want and need. I'm a professor at the University of California, San Diego. I have graduate students and I have undergraduate students. I have undergrads in my classes living in their cars because they can't find places to live. We need dorms. We need temporary housing. We need seasonal housing for the workers at the fairgrounds. Our fairgrounds have 600 units. They are 12-foot by 12-foot cinder block holes with no water and maybe a little window. And we're not allowed to count improvement of those units to make them far more livable for the agricultural workers who take care of the horses during the races, who go to the next fairgrounds and live in similar places. We're not addressing the true need. Who is tracking to see if the state legislation is achieving the so-called intended outcomes? There are unintended consequences. I've just talked about them. We must revisit our shrinking population in the San Diego region. The fact that at the projection in our forecast, we have 147,000 more people by 2042. That's new information. Our RENA numbers were given to us under the old forecast. This must be updated. Let's build what people need and want. We have about 10%, some regions 20% empty units. So let's subsidize rentals. Let that count. It doesn't count right now. So bottom line, what can we do? We can mandate affordable when we implement the laws. In Del Mar, we require that SB 9, when utilized, must produce an affordable unit in a project. Our ADUs, if they're rented, they must be rented at lower income affordable, but we can't force them to be rented. They're yoga studios and they're TV rooms for people. Subsidize rents, rebuild the miserable 100 square foot rooms at the fairgrounds into seasonal housing that makes sense and counts. We need to build what people need and want, not more empty, expensive market rate units for developers to borrow against so they can build their next project. Thank you.
Councilmember Duncan.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I want to echo the comments from Board Member Gasterland and Second Vice Chair Huebner. They're dead on correct. You know, the process, both from some of the actions from prior SANDAG boards, but also from HCD, in regard to Coronado, was an unmitigated disaster. How do we know that the process was a failure and made no sense? We know that because HCD came to Coronado, looked at Coronado and said, oh, it's impossible for Coronado to comply with their allocation. You need a legislative change. How can the process be so flawed and so not dealing in reality that it's impossible for a city to comply? How can there be no flexibility to where a city cannot comply? There's so many rules in it that literally make no sense, as well as how the allocation was calculated. The allocation took into account all the jobs on the military bases in Coronado, which, by the way, that land makes up more of Coronado than the rest of the city. And yet we didn't get credit for housing on the military base where they actually live and work. It takes into account sailors that are living on carriers, but yet Coronado is supposed to build housing for them. Where? On our port land? Oh yeah, we're not allowed under law to build on port land. Well, maybe we could build a few 10-story buildings in the middle of Coronado. Oh, that's not allowed. We have federal regulations and naval flight pattern and flight crash zones where we're not allowed to build. You know, what are we supposed to do? What HCD and what SANDAG's prior boards did is force Coronado to spend hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars that could have been used on actually helping people and use it on consultants and attorneys to come up on our own with a bizarre solution, which had us have the Attorney General sue our city and file a settlement, which guess what? Allowed us to get some credit for some of the new housing on military bases. The fact that there's no procedure, there's nobody to talk to, there's no help available for cities, the process is completely flawed and is doing a disservice to the public, disservice to low-income families who would actually like to maybe have a process where something can get built. You know, there's rules that we had to deal with, for instance, in Coronado, that says you must zone lots that are a half acre or bigger owned by one party in order to get a certified housing element. How many of those lots do you think exist in Coronado? Basically none. That's why in our settlement with the Attorney General, One of the lots that had to be included was our police station. We're almost out. We don't have any other lots. So what do we do with the next cycle? So when you speak to us today, what we're hoping to get is actually some details. What actually might get better? When is it going to get better? How do we participate and make it better? I mean, great, there's been some stakeholder surveys. That gives us zero comfort. We need help from your department. We need help. We need information. We need a partner. We need to make this process actually work for our population, not just politicians somewhere making up rules that make no sense and can't be complied with. And despite our settlement with the Attorney General, we're in a whole new phase with HCD. Beyond RENA. Is anybody else in beyond RENA? Other requirements that you have to comply with or you can't move forward? It's like, when does it end? When does it make sense? When do we have something that we can actually do without just pouring hundreds of $1,000s into regulatory, fees and litigation fees and having nothing to show for it? Coronado couldn't do something like say, oh, hey, we have Orange Avenue, which by the way has hundreds of thousands of vehicles travel it daily for the whole, region. We can't say, oh, we'll add another story on top of our buildings and have mixed use and provide some good housing there because none of those lots comply. How does that make any sense? How are we doing anything to help the population and get maybe teachers or police officers places to live? We're doing nothing. This process has been an unmitigated disaster.
Mayor Kranz.
Looks like we're going to hear from all the small cities here this morning. Yeah, the arena doesn't work for Encinitas at all. Whatever number we get for low income, you have to multiply it by 5 in order to make it work. No net loss being triggered at entitlement as opposed to when the units actually hit the market is ridiculous. I am reminded of the saying, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. RENA is broke. And the first thing that came out in the presentation today was HCD defending the RENA process. And so I'm not very hopeful when I hear that. I'm also disappointed that they're on that Zoom screen instead of in front of us here. I'm sorry that we agendized Gustavo and he couldn't make it. It's all pretty ridiculous. And I think that it speaks to their unwillingness to really address the concerns of the region. Councilmember Duncan said that politicians are adjusting this. And I frankly think it's a little more insulting because what we really have are civil servants in a department that has no real accountability making decisions that just don't work in practice. So thank you.
Councilmember Musgrove.
Congratulations, Megan, for being here today and having to hear all this. This whole descent into chaos and uncertainty really began with the state taking back the redevelopment funds. And it was a horrible situation. We were able to build up our stock with those funds. Now they're gone. And the answer always seems to be adding more layers of legislation onto issues that we have, frankly, as a state have created. And so let's just add a few more rules on there. And instead of threatening our jurisdictions with fines for failing to meet numbers, which we really can't control, it's a market issue, why don't you offer us options and then provide the funding for those options so we can work with our local developers? So as one of my colleagues told me just a moment ago, it's not about affordability, it's about attainability. We have these bands with numbers that are constantly changing with the economy, yet we're stuck with these numbers. So then how do you say no to a developer about a project when you know full well all they have to do is smile at you, pull their card, and now you're with a project that really nobody wants and ultimately will cost too much to build? And then is it in that band of affordability anymore? They'll just raise the cost of everything else to meet those minimum requirements. We're effectively held hostage because Sacramento has put a black and white answer into a gray world. We need to have that decision-making at the local level. And I will close by asking a question. I've had several of my constituents ask me about Prop 1, which recently passed, not by a large margin, but enough to pass, that there's a stip in there that says HCD has overriding authority over any SB 10 issue from local jurisdictions. So if you don't have the answer for that, I would appreciate you looking into it and getting back to us. Thank you.
Mayor Minto.
It's very interesting to hear so many of the speakers today from the dais saying pretty much the same thing. Several years ago, we didn't hear everybody sitting at this table talking about the same thing. And, RENA is controlled by a piece of legislation every single time we get a new RENA. Every single time. There's not just add-ons or amendments. It's got to be a whole new piece of legislation, to the best of my recollection. For instance, some of the issues that Coronado had, and I think Lemon Grove and one other city, I forget, last time, they appealed some of the decisions that were made here. And it was sent back because the legislation specifically said the appeal process is held by the MPO. And you know what? That's like going back to the fox and saying, don't eat the hens. Doesn't work very well. So there has to be an appeal process in whatever legislation that is created that is outside of the organization. Not only that, but there has to be some ability to be able to do some horse trading. I know when they sat there and said, Coronado, 1,100 units. And I forget how many of the others, be quite honest with you, because after a while, you just can't believe what you're hearing, so you don't hear it anymore. I sat here and said, I got 2,600 acres we're looking to build on in my city. I'll take some of that. I'll take some of those arena numbers. Clearly told, you can't do that. You can't trade. And I'm like, well, that just doesn't make sense. How do we work together as a region if we can't work together as a region legally? How redundant is that question? Holy mackerel. So I agree with Lisa. Nobody else probably even really had to speak. Everything that you hit was almost every single point. I appreciate that. I appreciate the fact that my city is just as impacted, even though we're inland and we do have a lot of land, because, and I said it during the last time the HCD director was here, I said, who's going to fine us? Who's going to put me in prison? Who's going to put my council in prison if we don't meet the numbers? And it all has to do with the totalitarian state dictating what we do in our own communities. So I support all the words that have been said here today. And I would ask that we find out what legislator is going to write the legislation next time first and have something to say to them about it and make sure it's done correctly, or at least in a very fair and equitable manner, since we're allowed to use those words nowadays.
Councilmember Burkholder.
Thank you. I almost outwardly applauded the comments prior to my ability to be able to address this, the arena number issue. Carlsbad is who I represent, Megan, and I'm just noticing that you're preoccupied. So I'm kind of wondering, are you taking notes or what is it that you're doing while we're really pleading our cases?
I'm trying to take notes. I apologize for that. And I was trying to check on the status of our, I'm sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I often do that too when people speak. I just wanted to make sure that you weren't having to communicate with Gustavo and figure all that stuff that's going out there. Carlsbad has a general plan where we plan for population and we plan for building and development and build out. And we're about 115,000 people now. We expect to be quite full at 135,000 people, yet we have RENA numbers somewhere around 4,000 new units. And guess what? In my district, which is the oldest part of Carlsbad, it's almost 1,700 that I have to absorb. That is not a fair allocation. And I agree with Mayor Minto that if this truly were a regional approach, there are plenty of adults in this room that can figure out what we need for our city, and it doesn't need to come from Sacramento.
Councilmember Fisher.
Thank you. You know, I echo the sentiments of my colleagues here. Megan, I think the best thing you could probably do instead of trying to scurry down and take the notes, I would just take this meeting from our website and show it to your colleagues and the board that you work with to really give them understanding, not just the words that have been spoken, but the emphasis that have been put on to it. You know, the one thing that I keep hearing is affordable. That's a total misnomer. There's nothing affordable about affordable housing. There's no way to build affordable housing in this state because of all the tax fees and other regulatory things that come up. And so, you know, as we think about the next cycle, actually, I guess we need to think about this cycle and figure out what's going to be done. And if your team's focused on the next cycle, I don't know how that's even possible. You know, when we've not been able to achieve. The last thing I'd like to you know have happen is we get to this next cycle and it's compounded upon what's already been given to us that we've not been able to achieve. We've all been taught in high school that goals should be achievable. From the get-go, what we've been given for housing numbers has never, ever been achievable in the smaller cities. I'm not sure what it looks like in the big cities, but in the smaller cities, it's absolutely not achievable. The impact that putting 1,300 units into a 2 square mile, 99% built out city without any course of funding for infrastructure, it's just not going to be possible. And I hope that HCD is getting the same feedback statewide and will react accordingly. And at some point, I'm going to be honest, they're going to have to say, you know what, we screwed up. We need to go back and fix what we've sent out to the public, to the elected officials, and all those who are trying to make this happen. If you fail in something like this, it's not because we haven't really tried. We've invested a lot of time in the city of Imperial Beach, and it sounds like my colleagues have also spent that time. We've tried. And if we failed, it's because the goals weren't achievable. We've seen the economy change. We've seen COVID hit us. There's so many different factors. And to be honest, I would hope that HCD would have been the entity that said, hey, we realize what's happening in the world. We're going to come to the cities first and have a plan, not make us sit back and worry what's going to happen with these fines and penalties and all that stuff. So, you know, I think that we need to look at where we're at now and what HCD can do to help us. You can't just give us things to do and not help us when we're failing. That's not how it works, in my opinion. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to what we've had to say. And again, I hope that your colleagues will really take what we've said, because I'm sure it mirrors everything that's happening within the state, up and down coast, inland, wherever, and come to a plan and bring a good plan back to the cities, back to the planning agencies that will help us. Thank you.
And Deputy Mayor Keim.
I'm going to start. I know you don't watch SANDAG meetings regularly, but you're seeing something very uncommon here today. So we're all on the exact same page, and that should send a strong message. So whether I agree with RENA or not, which I do not, but we can meet our RENA numbers. So we're doing our first in Oceanside, our first general plan update in the last 40 years almost. So we can meet our 6,200 RENA numbers without rezoning any of our single family neighborhoods. Yet, one thing I can count on almost every project lately in our single family neighborhoods, besides 8 to 10 waivers for all kinds of design standards and development standards, which are critical for our city, is a threatening letter from HCD if we don't approve the project. It is, I'll tell you, in my time at city leadership, the housing policy and legislation out of Sacramento has been one of the most disappointing and disastrous things I've seen. And I can't, I want to thank Lisa Huebner for her leadership and her eloquent comments on this. And I think we stand together as a region. You know, and I'll close with this. Every year we've seen this push for more housing legislation. Housing's gotten more expensive. Homelessness crisis has worsened. And at a certain point, do we not step back and say, this isn't working? Like my colleague, Mr. Fisher, said, what can we do to fix it? But we don't, we just double down and make it worse. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Duncan.
Thank you. I think you could tell, obviously, it's a very difficult, heated and painful situation for the cities. And I just wanted to ask one question of you, or one thing is, do you think your staff, when they deal with all the cities here, do you think their mentality is we're trying to help the cities, we're trying to help them comply, we're trying to help them get through the process? Or do you think the position taken by HCD's staff when dealing with the cities of let's see how much more we can force out of them, how much more we can kind of, punish the cities? Is it like a prosecutorial relationship with the cities, or does the staff have the mentality of we're trying to help you, city, get through this process? We're your partner. We're housing community development. If that's just rhetorical, you don't have to answer, but I would strongly ask and appreciate it if you would consider that top to bottom at your agency, because I think the cities would love to have a real partner.
One final comment from Councilmember LaCava.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I would be remiss to let just the small cities speak and for you to be dismissive because it's only the small cities speak. There are those of us in the big cities that actually understand the challenges that are in front of us and are just as equally frustrated. City of San Diego is not going to meet its RHNA numbers for the lower income. And there is, as the colleagues, my colleagues have said, absurdity that there is no funding mechanism to deliver the RHNA numbers for lower income. And we can all have the fantasy of inclusionary, but that is not going to get us the numbers. And actually, as I understand, there's new state legislation that actually makes inclusionary less of an option going forward. So unless there is a funding mechanism at the pace at which we're required to build lower income housing, what are we doing here? And I also reflect on the fact that I believe that housing is a public safety and a public health issue going forward. But as others have said, we do what we do as a city, as elected leaders, and then we leave it to private property owners, private home builders, and then the private markets to actually deliver. There's a disconnect there. And if we can't figure that out, we're never going to get there. I'll also mention that we have new numbers from the Department of Finance about what we think is going to happen in the state in 2040. What the heck are we supposed to do with that? It sends such a confusing message to elected leaders about what we're supposed to be doing today and to the public when we're predicting a drop in population. And I particularly think it has a lot to do with the cost of housing. And so if we don't figure that out now, I think there is still a solution for us to not look at this population drop. And I don't want to hurt people that are in desperate need of quality, affordable, with a capital A, housing today because of some projection about what's going to happen in the decade starting in 2040. And I'll close with, it is a regional number. The small cities were not created based on housing. They were created based on a lot of other factors. We didn't talk about housing. We didn't talk about mixed income housing back in the day. And it is not reasonable. And I would agree with small cities, and I maybe shouldn't say this, but I agree with them that the idea that we can't collaborate in terms of where we deliver that housing, what that looks like should bubble up from us up, not from the state down, to figure out how we deliver housing that is close to work, that is truly affordable, that gets us to get closer to the numbers. I realize you're an implementer that you have to deal with a legislation that has different ideas, but you're also a powerful voice to say, well, do what you say, legislation, but it's not working. And we need you to have that voice in Sacramento to let them know. This is not about small cities complaining. This is not about small cities that are not interested in housing the low-income folks that work in their cities. This is about solutions that actually deliver results. And at the end of the day, if we're not delivering housing, then we're all failing. And that's not right. So I want you to know that I want my colleagues to know that there are folks in the big cities that understand the challenges you have and that we have to do different, get the results that we all know we need. So thank you, Vice Chair.
Thank you. And Councilmember Melendez, our final.
Good morning. Thank you for this discussion. And I want to say that with the City of Vista, we are prepared to build more housing. I think we can accommodate more housing, and we want to build affordable homes for people in our community. But I absolutely agree with the statements that without an injection of funding, we cannot actualize the real housing that our community needs, which are those low income, subsidized, affordable units. Thank you.
Thank you. And Chair Vargas.
So thank you so much for being here. And I think it was mentioned today that you're hearing one voice from SANDAG, which is a really unique opportunity for us as a region. I will say as a county, we are having a hard time as well, right? We're meeting in trying to meet our affordable housing numbers as well. And just to add to the various conversations, I think when you're thinking about the coordination component, and I'm right now trying to figure out who in the legislature has the courage to lead some of this because it needs to happen around how we're actually counting the numbers regionally versus just by city, right? The issue of, for instance, the County of San Diego having the land, owning the land, and yet the City of San Diego, love them to death, taking the numbers because it's their city planning, it's their numbers, yet it's our county land that is actually providing the land, and we don't get to use those numbers for affordable housing, in all honesty, is not fair. I understand that RENA has been around for 25 years. This is what we're going into the 8th cycle, so 7th cycle, right? So I'm not sure it's Governor Newsom that is actually all at fault for this, right? But I do think that this is an opportune space and time to really listen to the smaller cities and some of the regional perspectives about how we move an agenda forward that's really impacting us all, because we're trying to address homelessness. And with Prop 1, we're going to try to figure out how to address a lot of the issues related to housing and mental health and how to meet some of these so many needs that our communities have. But yet the formula right now is not working for us in the local regions because of what we're trying to accomplish overall. And so I think that it behooves the folks who are looking at funding opportunities and as you're moving forward, really to think about how, we just like we are being innovative with Prop 1, right? Depending on who you ask, I was a big supporter. We have to think about innovation in housing and how we're impacting our local communities, because the long-term implications for real folks, right? Yesterday, I think in San Diego, I saw one ADU, is that what they call it?
Yes.
Yeah, ADUs, I forget, I'm sorry, my brain, is about $500,000, right? That's the cheapest house that you can buy in San Diego right now. I don't know how many people can live in a small ADU, and the fact that is what we're promising our communities and our kids, and that's the part of the American dream, to me, is just ridiculous. And to the council member who mentioned right earlier today that our students are living in cars and our adjunct professors are living in cars, is the reason why I ran for office 4 years ago when I was a community college trustee, and that hasn't changed. And so I think as we're moving forward, we really need to think about revamping the formula. And I know that there was a lot of stakeholder discussion around RENA 2.0, but I think really listening to the small cities and coming back with a larger solution, housing bonds in November. I know people don't want to talk about things like that, but I think we need to really think outside the box, because this is going to kill our communities. People are leaving and people can't afford to live here. And those that are living here are living in cars and in streets, and it's unacceptable. So if you can relay that message, I think it would be really powerful and important.
Thank you. Before I turn it over to you, Megan, I see we have one more speaker, Mayor Vasquez, and we're trying to wrap this up by 10:30.
I'll make this very quick here. I just want to let everyone know that the city of Lemon Grove is the only city in the entire county of San Diego that met the affordable housing requirements in the 5th cycle. And we did that by changing our zoning and changing our process for developers to develop. And not only did we meet that requirement, we exceeded it. And we are 1 out of 13 cities in the entire state of California that met that requirement. When I look at the 6th cycle numbers, and it was affordable housing that we built, and working in conjunction with developers. But when I look at the numbers that we have right now, the numbers are focused on above moderate units, and that is not a good fit for my city. And so this RENA process needs to change. And this RENA process needs to take in consideration the true needs of our area and allow us as elected leaders to come up with a method to ensure that we can all build housing. It truly is a need. We are in a crisis right now. And this RENA formula does not work. Doesn't work for Lemon Grove. It doesn't work for the County of San Diego, and it doesn't work for the state of California. Thank you.
Thank you. Megan, I'll turn it over to you and then have a couple closing remarks.
I appreciate everything that was said today, and I'm sure it's small comfort, but the things shared are things that I have heard, and I believe they are very true things. The amount of change that local government went through in the last cycle is enormous. And I'm sure that there are times where it doesn't feel like we're the supportive partner you'd like us to be, and I do take that comment about the perspective of my staff extremely seriously. That is not, we do really believe that everybody being in compliance is our goal. We do not have any good feelings about not helping people get there. There's a lot of passion there, but if you're not feeling it, you're not feeling it. And if you're not feeling that support, you're not feeling that support. And so just thank you for your the work that went into everyone's comments today. And I've been to some, I feel it, I feel the comments were unanimous. I do not ignore that point. So I just am very grateful for the work that you all put into so eloquently describing what your cities are going through, and your county, Chair Vargas. And just know that we do want to be your partner, and we do want to get to solutions together. So those things are not things that we take lightly that you shared today. And they are things we want to continue to work on with all of you together. So this is not a case of me hearing your complaints and not doing something about them. These are things that we need to work. We beg for feedback at HCD. We believe in continuous improvement. What you shared today says we're not hitting the mark, right? So we need to come back to you all and show some progress there. So I do appreciate it, and I'm grateful for your candor and your eloquence today.
Thank you, Megan. I'd just like to underline a couple things. We really need some change in the 6th cycle because the goals are completely unrealistic, and there is now punishment for all of us if we don't meet them. It's serious. The implications to all of our communities is dire. I could go on and on about the number of projects that are coming online that look good to HCD, but I'm losing all of our low-income working class families, all of them. And it's terrible. So with that, I will turn it over to Colleen. Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Megan, for joining us. We'll be in touch. We'll be sending you a follow-up letter. And again, I do hope, as was suggested, that you share with Director Vasquez,
Yes.
Velasquez, the entire segment of this meeting.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much. And now to Colleen.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the discussion. Just something I wanted to point out to you all, the package that we're going to be sending out, which is the responses to issues that all of you have brought up over the last several months. We also have a template letter in there. And since you brought up funding a lot around RENA, in the state budget, there's proposed cuts to housing funding. So we have a template letter that we're sending out to all of you that you can send. We are also sending that to your city managers as well. We as SANDAG have already sent that letter. So that will be in your packets, and just wanted to make sure you were aware of that. Thank you.
The irony is thick.
Madam Vice Chair.
Yes.
It sounded like you were reading from a nice long letter that you'd obviously put a lot of thought into.
Yes.
Would you be willing to share that with?
I would be happy to share that.
Okay, thank you.
I'll email it to you. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very
Can I
much.
ask a question?
Yes.
Colleen? do we have anywhere where we can see how the timeline on the process is going to work out going, I know it's a little ways away, but I do get questions from community, from our city manager, from people. So, we understand what you just described has happened and is happening, but what does it look like? Well, we've started doing, and I know SANDAG's done it with other things. In Coronado, we have Project Coronado page where all of our 5 or 6 main issues are up there, whether it's from the storm or including our arena situation, but a bunch of things are on there. People can go there and get the timeline and the information and the steps that are happening. That would be helpful to me. And if it's already there, point me in the direction and I thank you for it. But if not, I'd like to, where do we go next?
On this issue or?
Yeah,
just
this
in-
issue.
I think what we wanted to do with this particular conversation is bring the director in, have them provide recommendations. And I think it's up to the board to think about what we want to do next. I'm not sure that today is that time, and happy to have another discussion as a board. I think that it was one of the items that you all brought up to me last year at the board, right? So board retreat. So this is a discussion that we're having next around this. So open to that discussion, happy to agendize it again, to have another internal discussion about what else could we do, timelines, questions, whatever you have, happy to move on.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I'm not criticizing for how it was handled today. I'm glad it was handled this way.
No.
I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something and that we're all kind of on the same page. We'll
No,
plan to be
this is-
forthcoming.
This is absolutely was an opportunity, per all of your requests, to make sure that we are able to address this issue as a result of previous boards being divided on where they were on RENA.
Thank
That's
you.
my understanding, right?
And more. And the fact that it's completely unrealistic. where-
No, I understand, but I
Yeah.
think as a board,
Yeah. Yes.
positions were taken.
The way to
different-
vote, et cetera.
There was a lot of different things that happened here before.
Mhm.
You have a very different board now. The economic situation, I think, that we're all facing is a different one. And so I think this is a first good step to where we're going next. But I'm open to any of your recommendations. We can follow up with another meeting and public meeting. And if you have thoughts before that, also happy to do that. And then we'll follow up with the letter, make sure that everybody gets this information, and I'll turn it over back to you. I'm sorry.
Okay, it's quite all right. Okay, let's move on. Oh, Deputy Mayor, did you have something? Oh, okay, all right.
Hurry up and go.
Yeah, go away. So let's move on to our next item 11, which is the draft fiscal year 2025 program budget. Colleen, please go ahead.
Thank you. In the interest of time, I'm going to provide the overview of the budget for you all. I also want to call up our Director of Financial Planning and Budgets and Grants, Susan Huntington, who really has led this effort to bring forward the draft FY25 budget. So just a few things to highlight for you, very high level. So this is a $1.3 billion budget. This lays out our work plan for the fiscal year 25. There are about 100 different funding sources that come together that make up this budget. And then when you look at that whole pie, about half of our budget goes toward our capital program. So that's $654 million toward our capital projects. These are the projects, transit, bike projects, freeway projects, roadway projects. Then there's about 20% of the budget, so that's something like $239 million is passed through. So that goes to all of you for local streets and roads. It's also funding that goes to our transit agencies for operations. About 10% of the budget, so 114 million, is what is dedicated to planning and meeting the mandates that the state and federal government require of us in order to continue to get state and federal funds. That's where we do our regional plan. That's where we do the required coordinated plan and all of those components. And then we have another roughly 6% on operations, and that's about $80 million. So that gives you kind of a sense of the overall pie. A couple things that I just wanted to make clear. The FY25 budget that's in front of you today is really building on the FY24 budget that you approved last year and includes the budget amendment that you all approved this last October. So adding in that $600 million over several years, that has also been incorporated here. So this is the draft. This is what we put out for public review. We send this to our funding agencies. We will be taking this to our social equity working group, making it available to all of you to weigh in on and provide input. When we bring the final back to you, we will incorporate the most recent grants that we've received. So the federal earmarks, the federal Reconnecting Communities grants that have come in, the state grants that have come in. And so that will be added in, as well as the reallocation of resources to ensure we have the staff on Transnet to follow up on the ITALK audit. So those are things that you will see that will be included. I wanted you to know as well that the budget in front of you today includes new positions for the independent performance auditors. There's 2 new positions to support that. There are a couple of other positions that we're proposing as well. One to help support our legal team in various documents that need to be processed. And then I think I wanted to point out as well, continuing funding for our ERP system. And this is really a follow-up to the audits that we have received, to have a coordinated software where we're able to keep track of our budget along with contracting, invoices, and all of that. So that will continue that service. So with that, I will just stop there. Happy to answer any questions that you might have. This is the draft budget. So this is time for input. It'll be out for public review. Susan, for...
Well, we'll bring back the final budget on May the 10th. So between now and probably the end of April, we'll be looking for input from our funding partners, stakeholders, and the board.
Thank you. So that concludes the report, and happy to answer any questions you have.
Let's first go to public comments, and then we'll go to member discussion and questions.
Thank you, Vice Chair. We'll start with Mark, if you'd like to step up to the podium, and after Mark will be Truth. I'm not sure if Mark is, oh, okay, thank you.
Mark, at this point, it's becoming obvious to everyone that the system's completely flawed, and that's intentional. You can't stop homelessness, no matter what you do, if you don't stop inflation. The founding fathers were really clear about it. I don't remember it verbatim, but it went something like this. If you ever allow the banks to control the issue of currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, the corporations and banks that will grow up around you will deprive your children of all property until they wind up homeless. So that's the basic quote. And you're seeing it right before you. I appreciate that you're trying in this corrupt system. It is Agenda 21. It's real. People need to look at Rosa Corey's video. Her name is spelled Rosakoire. Rosa Corey Part 1. There's several parts on YouTube. The real title is longer, but that'll bring it up. People need to see it. They're destroying us, and it's intentional.
Thank
for
you.
global
Your time
governance.
has expired. Our next speaker will be Truth, followed by Michael Brando.
396 pages, $1.3 billion. I did read all of it. And there are more projects than there are seconds to speak. So no to 3% salary increases, $768,000 for board travel stipends and security, all privileges. $150,000 for AB 43 to reduce speed limits by 10 miles per hour. About $50,000 for the high entry network to further reduce speed limits in whole areas. AB 251 to tax people for the weight of their cars. The partnership with Ford funded CAVNU for autonomous vehicles and electronically controlled roads. Almost $7 million for disrespectful whippersnappers to ride public transit. The $200,000 R&D Fantasyland. $760,000 for SANDAG's operating system to track every single device in person. And all spending related to SANDAG's failed public outreach. Highways, roads, sidewalks, dams, storm channels, and pump stations are not maintained. Where are big mismanaged budgets with multi-million-dollar bike lanes, tolls, and taxes getting us? The People's Cost Benefit Analysis says we're moving backwards. How many GHGs have been reduced anywhere? Or are you guys just reducing our lives? Something to consider when you waste all of our money.
Our next speaker will be Michael Brando, who will be followed by Paul the Bold.
I echo everything Truth just said. In your handout, it talks about your initiative involves climate change. Again, an omission. Again, why is not geoengineering talked about here? Why not? You just ignore it as if it's something not real. You also mentioned public health. Well, many of you were involved in promoting the counterfeit pandemic. You know what I'm talking about, COVID, and people aren't buying that anymore. And Lisa, you were talking when Mark was speaking. One thing you mentioned earlier in regards to all of this too, is that the private market is involved in everything. That's something else that all of you don't talk about here, the private market, the commodity of currency, the banking system, the Federal Reserve, which is what all of you depend on to keep your operations going. This is what some people have spoken about, how all these organizations are simply corporations. They're not looking out for the interest of the people, but for the interest of the bankers that are behind the scenes, Bill.
Our next speaker will be Paul the Bold, followed by the person with the phone number ending in 813. Paul, you're self-muted at the moment.
Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Right. Okay, Paula Bold, let me find my speech. It is unfair that two agencies, the county and city of San Diego, both dysfunctional after the recent storms. It's unfair they controlled 53% of the votes in a weighted vote scenario. In that sense, SANDAG does not really represent the county. The revenue and economic charts are pretty up to date, so there is no excuse for some of the 2- and 3-year-old SANDAG data in some of the reports I've seen. One thing I didn't see was reserves for collapsing bluffs, floods, and other emergencies not in your control. They should be there. The Baja California governor reported a week or two ago that the U.S. part of the Otay Mesa port of entry was rarely started, maybe not even enough to count as started. Is that why this project is not included in the summary of expenses?
Thank you. Your time has expired. Our next speaker will be the person with the phone number ending in 813, followed by the original draw.
Consuelo. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so told you so. Policies are already biting small cities in the butt. It's refreshing to hear some of you echoing what concerned citizens have been saying for some time now. It is all pretty ridiculous. They purposely create the chaos, and now they're like chickens with their heads cut off. Lisa, stop saying government money. It's the people's money. And correction, you do not represent 3.3 million in the county. You represent the feds. This government will never solve homelessness. Enough with the empty words and selling false hope. It's all purposely flawed. Government never has money for funding social problems, but when government needs our money, they make sure they get it. No penalties for government delays and incompetence. It's the taxpayers who are always penalized. Everything is worse. Thanks to government. Government formulas never work, Vargas. Get a clue.
Our next speaker will be the original draw, followed by Blair Beekman, and Blair will be our final speaker.
Sadly, we have an unethical CFO who is responsible for a $1.3 billion budget. Why is the CFO, Andre, being sidelined recently? Is it because he has lost all credibility with the board, with his unethical actions, not doing his job or covering up toll issues going back a couple of years? Andre even messed up the triennial audit and the ITALK audit. Because Andre didn't do his job, you're hiring more staff. So findings weren't followed up on. Plus, he continues to try to minimize the accounting issues that were on his watch and pass his years of mistakes and negligence on someone only there for a few months. It seems to me that the CFO, with this track record, should have been the one terminated, not the one he terminated for exposing accounting issues. Nor why is he being protected and not held accountable? You know what they say, follow the money. Is the county inappropriately taking more than its fair share? Is this why you're protecting the CFO that's been covering up toll issues and lying to the board? Has SANDAG staff shared with the board that the FBI was in the SANDAG offices questioning contracts and finance staff last week?
Our next speaker will be Blair Beekman, who will be our final speaker on this topic.
Hi, this is non-agenda public comment time, correct?
No, this is actually comments on the budget item.
Oh, okay. Budget issues. Thank you. Sorry about that. To quickly offer, thank you that the work that you're doing for bus scheduling to be a bit more take place more within an hour. I think that's an interesting concept. I don't know if it's the greatest in the world, but you've been doing it on the free. I think it's been helpful. I know other people for other bus lines wish they could have a bit more service. Good luck in practicing and using free in San Diego as an example of the free route as ways to increase buses per hour. Thank you.
That concludes the speakers on this item.
Thank you. Now on to member discussion. Councilmember Melendez.
Thank you. And thank you, staff, for your work on this draft budget. I'm really excited to see the inclusion of the Inland Rail Trail for phases 3 and 4. And during consent, we'll have the opportunity to approve a contract for that, which is very exciting. The City of Vista is investing a lot of our resources for a small city into improving our local bike network, especially in conflict areas, because more and more we're seeing conflicts result in serious injury and death. And more we're seeing people want to pursue the use of their bicycles on our streets. And we've allocated almost $3 million towards those local bike enhancements. And we will be breaking ground on the first City of Vista protected bike lane infrastructure this year, which is really exciting. And the Inland Rail Trail is really important for us as well, because it's bringing a corridor through our downtown. The locations for this enhancements for 3 and 4 will be Civic Center Drive and Mar Vista Drive, which will bring people closer to our economic and cultural center, which is a really awesome place to be. And what I would ask is that SANDAG staff continue to work with cities like the City of Vista, who are, working towards building out their local bike networks, so that we can really build a robust system with perhaps matching funds and make it more robust beyond just the conflict areas. But I have a vision that all of our neighborhoods in Vista would be able to have the confidence to safely bike to our downtown. I want to make our downtown accessible for people to be able to get on their bikes with their families and come and, see a local play or come to a local restaurant or visit the central locations there that our families love to enjoy. And so please continue to enhance our regional bike network by working with cities to provide the infrastructure for cyclists, for commuters to draw people towards those economic and cultural centers, and for recreation and a better quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Chavez.
Thank you. I'd like to extend my gratitude to SANDAG staff for their comprehensive briefing on the draft budget for fiscal year 2025. My attention was drawn to a line item on page 3-24 detailing the transition efforts and analysis for SR 125 to a new tolling system. At the South County briefing yesterday, when I asked about the retirement of the SR 125 bonds that was dated for 2042 in this budget, staff helpfully explained that a future item would be brought once the necessary analysis of the changes to the budget have been completed. And Ray Major mentioned we are doing that analysis now. So I just wanted to ask, out of the interest of clarity, if that analysis and effort is similarly reflected and or added in this budget, or will it be coming back to the board at future dates?
Thank you, council member. So it's in the current budget that we're doing this analysis of the payoff. We'll bring that back to this board before the end of this fiscal year, and we'll lay out the scenarios for what it would take for the payoff, allow you all to decide on how you want to proceed. That may involve an amendment to the FY25 budget in order to accommodate what comes out of that analysis.
I really do appreciate it. And I hate to sound like a broken record, but it's so important for our communities in South Bay for this to be brought up and added appropriately to our fiscal year 2025. And I just additionally want to mention really quickly that I would like to highlight the importance of grade separation on the west side of Chula Vista. The at-grade crossings of our surface streets in Chula Vista negatively impact traffic as cars are forced to wait while the trolley crosses and potential for accidents, with one example being the unfortunate collision that occurred at the announcement ceremony of the Palomar Station grade separation that you're well aware of. And with transit frequency a priority for the region, there has been talk of shorter trolley headways, which would further impact the streets while the trolley is at grade. I guess my question is, are there funds allocated to explore the potential for future grade separations in Chula Vista in this upcoming fiscal year? And well, we look forward to partnering with SANDAG to find ways to accelerate, prioritize the necessary environmental and planning studies.
The answer to your question about the grade separations, it's not just in Chula Vista. We're looking at grade separations on the entire Blue Line trolley to speed that up. So looking at where are all the conflict points and the best places to make those improvements. So that's in a planning study currently. And then we also will be putting money in the capital budget as the projects are identified.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Burkholder.
Thank you. And thank you, Colleen, for Transnet accountability. I think it's super important. I'm sure you can imagine what I'm going to talk about. The Transnet Extension Ordinance promised new connectors for general purpose travel lanes, eliminating the signal, which creates pollution, is a safety concern in traffic, and it creates traffic congestion. Not to mention the maintenance costs for Carlsbad residents, which would not exist if the connector were built as promised. This budget doesn't appear to have funding for this project or any HOV lanes on State Route 78 or I-5. Yet, we have $136 million for the Central Mobility Hub without even a determined location. And it's not mentioned in the ITALC review of the Transnet Ordinance. I don't know. I strongly agree that our ITALC committee, that the budget should focus on budgeting and funding the existing expenditure plan. And, also, I just wanted to say, I don't see any money for completion of the Coastal Rail Trail between Cannon and Tamarack. It's another 20-year-old project, but Encinitas is getting some. So I would not be able to support the budget as it is right now, and I'd like for you to look into those things that I've asked. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Shu.
Thank you, Vice Chair Huebner. So I wanted to commend SANDAG staff for putting together this huge budget. It's a large document with lots of parts to it. But I want to do some kind of a broad overview of a few issues. And one of them has to do with the strategic planning framework, and specifically with regards to our equity. So for several years now, SANDAG has prioritized equity, but I guess I'm not feeling that the plan is addressing equity well enough with regards to looking at how projects were funded in the past few decades and how can we fund projects in the future to address equity. Equity needs to be well defined, and for us to understand that it's not equal. Equity means to right some of the inequitable things that were happening in the past. And I don't know if our planning effort really addresses that. So I hope that that can be worked into our processes and funded accordingly. Along with that is our effort to address health impacts from the planning process. This is not looking at health impacts from a CEQA perspective, in which you have a project, their health impacts, then you mitigate. I don't want mitigation. I want better planning to reduce the health impacts from our transportation system. And what that means is, as we now analyze projects, perhaps in the contracts, they can include an element on health impacts, so that as projects come up and planning continues, we reduce the health impacts from our transportation plan. So I'm not suggesting any changes to any wording of the budget as it is, but perhaps in the contracts that we actually have with outside vendors, that is an element of those contracts as they work on these planning efforts and analysis, as well as what our staff is involved with. But thank you for putting together a budget. It's a large document. I'll just make one side comment with regards to equity. The longest and most costly grade separation project did occur in our region. Over 3 miles of it in the most expensive real estate in our region. So it's about time that we look at costs about grade separation in some of the most used transit systems we have in our system going through the poorest neighborhoods. That's what I mean by equity. That's not happening with our prioritization process. Thank you.
Councilmember Shu, I just have a quick question for you on the tool that you're asking around health. Do you have something that you've used somewhere else? Because I know that for the County of San Diego, one of the things that I created was something called the budget equity tool. So as the budgets were prepared, some specific questions were asked. I don't know if that's what you're talking about as we're moving forward. And we can talk on the, if you have recommendations, please share them, because I want to make sure that a board member has made a request, and I'm not sure if there's a tool somewhere or something that we can use so we can be helpful to staff when we're directing them, and we can talk about it, separately, but.
Well, no, it's a good time for me to compliment SANDAG staff.
Okay.
The issue of addressing health impacts is new. We don't have good modeling tools for it. It takes years to develop that kind of tools. But we have very talented and dedicated staff at SANDAG that is working towards that end. I'm working with them. We're going to probably have a panel, hopefully by the summer, in which we're going to address health impacts, and we'll hear from practitioners, we'll hear from physicians and planners on how to fold in health impacts into our planning process, and then have that ahead of the game. So it is something new. So I don't want to say that we're not addressing it. We're just working on it. It's going to take some time.
Thank you. Thank you. Councilmember Duncan.
Thank you. And following on a couple of comments I've heard from other board members. First, one comment made by Councilmember Chavez. I do want to say I really do appreciate the staff's focus over, I don't know, the last 6 months or however long it's been on trying to give us briefings. It does make a difference. I didn't get the briefing on this one because I felt comfortable where I was with it, but thank you for that, and also for thinking about the retreat from where we were a year before, where we've had so many weighted votes when the first few months, and then now it's been, I think, a much better dynamic where we can discuss and negotiate things. So thank you for that. Those are just my preliminary comments. And then in regard to the budget, I'll be short. Once again, you may recall from prior budget meetings and amendment meetings, I like to take a look at the map geographically and look at the cities of Coronado and Imperial Beach. And as always, there are 0 projects in those cities. There's one project on the very edge of Imperial Beach for the Bay Shore to border bikeway, but it does seem to be sort of a persistent trend. So I'll just leave it at that with I guess one other comment. As a lot of other work is done on the Bay Shore Bikeway, usage has been increasing pretty dramatically in Coronado. I think between Imperial Beach and Coronado, it makes up about 50% of that entire Bay Shore Bikeway. Speaking about, equity and equity tools on spending, I would just urge whatever is developed and what's looked at, takes into account, just because something may be, near the beach between Imperial Beach and Coronado, the people that commute on the Bay Shore Bikeway to Coronado to work at the Dell and at the hotels and at the military and the restaurants and also into Imperial Beach, they're not, wealthy, stereotypical type views some people have of, Coronado homeowners. These are often, low income people trying to get to their job as whatever it is, from a housekeeper to a dishwasher all the way up to, high level military officers. And, I bring this up because 2 members of our mobility commission from the Coronado met with an employee of SANDAG who's over the Bay Shore Bikeway and was told, there will definitely be no spending and on this portion of the Bay Shore Bikeway. Again, we're done and it's off the table. And we do have issues on that side of the Bay Shore Bikeway with safety, with usage. And I just throw that out there for future discussions. But it also does come to my mind because when I'm at the retreat and I'm looking at, you know, some of the things we were looking at, and I think I briefly mentioned it to you, Colleen, was even after going through all the workshops and putting, you know, these stickies on, you know, projects we want, like, you know, the one thing I think I've ever talked about with SANDAG really asking for Coronado until I just mentioned the Bayshore Bikeway was some type of mobility pilot program to help primarily elderly but primarily the low-income enlisted sailors who have a significantly difficult time getting around town. And I mean, there's really no parking near the base and in our town for them to come in to eat, to move around. And when I looked at the list of mobility projects at the retreat, there was, and again, Coronado had been taken off that list as a potential city for that. So, you know, those are my comments. Please don't think no money should ever be spent to help anybody in Coronado or Imperial Beach again, because it doesn't seem to be happening. So, I mean, in the $4 billion of whatever we looked at in the last couple budgets, amended budgets, we would love to work with SANDAG on improving some quality of life for some people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gasterland.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. In this budget, there's $88 million that are about to be spent on soldier piles at the top of Del Mar Bluff, seawalls west of the toe of the bluff at the bottom, irrigation to restore vegetation scraped to build those seawalls, and a certain amount of drainage improvements. Soldier piles work. We in Del Mar are willing to put up with a soldier pile insertion. Seawalls cost loss of sandy beach. Sand on the beach, not seawalls, as we know from the beach restoration that's happening right now in Encinitas and just finished in Solana Beach. Sand on the beach, not seawalls, are the best protection against erosion for bluffs. That and diverting underground water from above to the east into controlled drainage. Irrigation dissolves the bluffs from above. I've experienced it myself. It becomes creme brulee with this crisp, sun-dried dirt shell on top. You step on it, you fall through. The bluff is mush underneath. It's clay full of water. It holds water and it slides when it's heavy. That's what's going on in San Clemente. That's what's going on right now in Del Mar. Right now, SANDAG is burying tens of thousands of square feet of beach behind seawalls with riprap behind those seawalls and dirt on top as we speak. The mobilization on construction was scheduled for yesterday. I haven't gone down to see it, whether it happened, but I assume it has. So our ask is please restore the funds for the Coastal Commission's required mitigation for this devastation to Del Mar's beach and the lack of access that the seawalls pose. There's $9 million in this budget, in addition to the $88 million to plan for the mitigation. 15 million, really 14.7, was deleted from the budget in October 2023 with the budget amendments, and it has not been restored in this budget. Yet, right now, our beaches are being buried, and our sand will be scoured, and it will be gone. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Vargas.
Thank you. I want to say thank you first to the team for doing such a fantastic job on putting all this together and hearing from all of our community members. My understanding is that this particular budget we're approving the draft budget that's going to be released so that we can make sure that our funding agencies and the public are able to review it, right? I mean, that's what we're doing today.
Absolutely.
And there's going to be an opportunity for people to provide feedback and adjustments will be made as accordingly, right?
Yes.
Okay, so with that in mind and hearing all of the comments from my colleagues, I want to go ahead and make a motion to support the 2025 SANDAG program budget as it stands so that we can go ahead and move forward with the next steps. Thank you.
I'd like to second that, please.
Thank you.
And I'll go to Ms. Maxon.
Good morning. Thank you. Representing the unincorporated area, we're 500,000 strong. I understand that we use the limited funds where it can do the most good, but I would like to remind everyone to keep in mind that we do have a large population outside of the populated corridor. And in addition to the over 500,000, we also have thousands of visitors on the weekends. So I see a lot of funding for bikeways, which is good for health and greenhouse gas reduction. But I see very limited funding for our Vision Zero plan to reduce highway severe injury and fatalities. I don't see a lot of money in the unincorporated area where all of the visitors are coming on the weekends. There's a tremendous amount of pressure on those roadways. Also, I don't see that a priority is being given to wildfire evacuation. And we've had 2 unsuccessful fire evacuations in '03 and '07. It's not a matter of if, but when we will have another one. I mean, right now it's green, but that won't be that situation in June. I would like to know how SANDAG determines the funding allocation. How do they decide that balance between a population that's concentrated and a population that's spread out? Yet there's still a need in both areas. And I do appreciate all of your work, but I'd like to understand how that calculus is made. Thank you.
Would you like to answer that? Or
I'll go ahead. So the annual budget really looks towards the regional plan prioritization process. So our regional plan is the long-term plan that establishes the implementation schedule of the projects. We use multiple different criterias in that project prioritization. The annual budget looks at when those projects are meant to be open. And then like if a project is meant to be open in 2035, we need to get started on that project, say in 2025. So we're really looking to implement the regional plan as we pull the budget together. And all of those criteria for prioritization come through the regional plan process.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Keim?
I'm going to support the draft budget to keep this going, but I do have serious concerns when you do final adoption. And, I don't want to not support a final budget because of a project here or there. I don't think that's reasonable for the region. However, there is a trend, and I'll repeat what Councilmember Burkholder said, the trend going towards a priority going towards other projects besides North County Transnet projects. So I really want to work with staff in the next few months and make sure that we move up. And the trend is you'll see big projects like 163 million front loaded in the next 5 years for a certain capital project down south. And then, we have 50 million at the end at 29 and 30 for SR 78 and 5 and the managed lanes, all those different things. I want to start moving things up and making sure that's a priority, and my residents know it's a priority if I'm going to actually support the final budget. Thank you.
Very good. So I see no more people on the, excuse me, Councilmember Musgrove.
Thank you there, Vice Chair. So kind of following on what the Deputy Mayor said, there's information in there about the express lane connectivity between I-5 and 78 and 15 and 78, but it doesn't address where. And putting it at those intersections doesn't really do anybody any good. It needs to be a little more inland. So whatever the plan is, I know originally we had funds set aside for environmental studies for the 1578 that went all the way out to Twin Oaks, which is about 2.5 miles west of that connectivity, which relieves a lot of the congestion and will relieve a lot of congestions on surface streets for people that want to avoid the nightmare of the 7815. And again, it's the same thing with I-5. Maybe when they were designed originally, it seemed like a great idea, but you effectively have 78 turning into a surface street right at the intersection of I-5. That all needs to be addressed. And I see a lot of projects and plans working with MTS. I see very few projects working with North County Transit, and not to take anything from my colleague Priyabat Patel from Carlsbad, but we need a little bit more partnership north of the 56 with some of the projects that affect transit, along with grade separation, how we're going to affect movement of people moving around from not just within North County, but also into San Diego. So a little less San Diego City centric would be really nice to see. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Colleen, would you like to follow up with anything?
Anyway, I really appreciate all of your interest in this. I know many of you were able to do the briefing. Some of you didn't have time. We're available to come out and talk in detail with you and make sure we fully understand your concerns. Honestly, we want to move up as many projects as possible. Hopefully you saw the handout here. This does show the I-5 HOV connector in Oceanside, the SR 78 I-5 express lanes connector, as well as the 78 I-5 to I-15 connectors as well. We do have additional funding that has come through the grants that we'll be able to incorporate here. And I really look forward to working with all of you as we prepare the final budget for your consideration later this fiscal year. So thank you for that.
Very good. So we have a motion by Vargas, a second by Hebner. Please vote. Santiago. There you go.
And that motion does pass with 17 yeses and 2 nos.
Okay, very good. Moving on, let's take public comments on item 12, which is our closed session.
Thank you, Vice Chair. The first speaker on this item will be Truth, and Truth will be followed by Mark.
All right, Lisa, as you can see, I put your regional dunce cap to great use. Thank you. Now, exposure to litigation. When there's whistleblowers fired, reps with serious inquiries have been ignored or interrupted. $15 million a mile of sustainable slime-free bike lanes where people are dying, like in Encinitas. Highways are being turned into walkways. Billions of dollars are wasted on our broken toll system for years on end, and extravagant spending has been the norm. Is it any wonder why there's lawsuits against SANDAG? That's why SANDAG should immediately be disfunded and dismantled. And consider that only 5 miles of that bike lane is almost the same cost of every SANDAG employee with benefits for a whole year, $15 million. I ought to sue SANDAG for wasting my money, my time, making me speak and making me starve during meetings. And when I win such a significant litigation case, I'm going to celebrate one of the most important holidays, Women's Pizza Month. Although I usually celebrate every day, the question today is Timmy's Place, TNT, or Make Pizza, or out of this city so they don't mismanage my tax money. Very hard decisions today. Thank you. Good luck on your case.
Our next speaker will be Mark, and Mark will be followed by Consuelo.
Mark, 54954.3C, I can only critique programs and policies but omissions. So it's amazing that there are not any lawsuits about, and even though this is not within your authority, about the banking system, the Federal Reserve, about the things that are privatized now, water and such. They used to be called the commons. No one a long time ago would have ever considered privatizing that. Everything's being privatized. This is UN Agenda 21. The WEF is supporting it. It's so totalitarian. It should be obvious to everybody here that when you make a society of people that don't have individual vehicles that can travel freely as much as they want easily, and you take away their guns except for 10-round clips on guns that would barely shoot your neighbor's door across the street if you tried, you've got a totalitarian society. It's the perfect setup.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Our next speaker is Consuelo, who will be followed by the original draw. Consuelo, I'm so sorry, but we can't hear you. I do see your mic is unmuted.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yep, there we go.
Okay, so this is so stupid. Regarding the stupid bike lanes, what about the many families who can't use these lanes due to having family members with disabilities? Where's the equity? Such hypocrisy. The majority of the county does not even know about this junk plan. If they did, there would be so much opposition. This is where our hard-earned money goes. Nothing benefits the people, it only benefits the agenda for the 21st century. According to this chair lady and some board members, bike lanes are more important than homelessness and poverty in the county. Disgusting. It's sad. Again, it's so fucked up.
Our next speaker will be the original draw, who will be followed by Blair Beekman.
Honestly, I don't know what you guys do that wouldn't put you in significant exposure to litigation, because you have a lot of nefarious actors that are incompetent at their job, dealing and handling money. And you're doing so many things across the board that it's a wonder, what could this be? You know, could it be like, I don't know, we have an invasion on our border and, you know, we're participating in a lot of crime that goes across the nation. Maybe somebody will come in and, you know, try and sue you guys for that. But then I'm just wondering, it's like with all this going on with the tolls and, you know, is this for a class action lawsuit for the tolls? Because you guys aren't doing what needs to be done, still trying to hide the things that are going on. And it's sad because the people wind up paying in the end for this. You make us pay for the things that you do, but then we also have to pay for your mistakes and your negligence and your inability to correct things, cure and correct them in a timely manner and make sure things are running well so that we don't face significant exposure to litigation.
Our final speaker on this item will be Blair Beekman. You can go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Blair Beekman. I wanted to speak on your hiring of a new CEO, but I think that's at 12 o'clock and different from the closed session item. So I'll save my public comment till public comment time after closed session. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. That concludes the public commenters.
Very good. Good segue to the fact that we are now going to move into closed session. I'll ask everyone who doesn't need to be here to please leave the room. And we will convene afterwards to share any reportable actions and then go to the consent calendar.
I'll find out for you. I think you're on the third floor.
So I just need to back to the board members. So go ahead.
Okay, I'm calling this back to order, and I'm going to turn it over to John Kirk for any reportable action.
The board met in closed session on item number 12. They were briefed and there is no reportable action.
Very good. We're now going on to the consent agenda, items 2 through 9.
Move to approve the consent calendar.
Oh, we have to go to public comments first, and then we'll go right to you, Mayor Minto. Public comments on consent, please, Francesca.
Our first public commenter will be Truth. And Truth will be followed by Mark.
Not so fast. Item 2 of the minute should say what time Nora left the March 22nd meeting. And the word primary has a typo on page 11. Item 3 securities were bought for almost $17 million, including an evil Microsoft. Item 4, biking is not emission-free. Humans are always emitting carbon, even while biking. Science. And that bike lane chart looks like a race to the bottom. Item 5 says $433,000 for a study on sand, but it also says $764,000, which is it? Item 7, SANDAG collects $430 million a year in transit taxes from us, and yet they have over $2 billion in outstanding debt. So I'm going to recommend closing shop and refunding the taxpayers. Item 8 is almost $15 million for a 1-mile bike lane, plus $10 million to H&TB, who are the ones that helped break the toll system. And item 9, Nora went to an event by Lasar, who owns the Global Policy Minion Academy, funded by Mark Zuckerberg. And Jack Burnmore, GHG, is going to the National Council of Regions in DC, where regional governance minions plotted their control plans. Every time a rep burns GHGs, the SANDAG budget needs to be reduced for equity. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Mark, who will be followed by Michael Brando.
For bicycles, to have everyone on bikes like in China with camera systems set up, and 10 round clips if you even have that in the future. It's totally totalitarian. It's like China. If you can't see that, you should see Ghostbusters. I was sitting at the movie the other day, and they said something that actually reminded me of some of the people at some meetings. Some of the most intelligent people I know are morons. That's like, and I don't mean to insult you. It's just, if you can't see that, it's so blatant. The sand, yeah, we need more sand. Of course, I don't have enough time. Housing, I've already talked about housing and what a total scam that is. For a 1/50th of the cost, you could solve the housing problem temporarily, but inflation will just make it exponentially worse. And you're not even talking to the people about that.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Our next speaker will be Michael Brando, who will be followed by Mike.
Number 4 says that SANDAG is providing free bike education services for schools and employers. Isn't that interesting? What are you in the business of? You know, I want to talk about an omission, because there's always all this enthusiasm, Jack Shu, all this enthusiasm about getting out of cars and walking everywhere and biking everywhere. But you know what education doesn't ever happen? To talk about being a constitutional republic. And it's always called a democracy. We hear Sean Elo Rivera constantly at City of San Diego saying, democracy this and democracy that. So again, instead of bikes, how about educating people instead of promoting the fake science of climate change as if it's organic? How about that? Just a suggestion.
Our next speaker will be Mike, and after Mike, we'll go to the folks on Zoom and start with the original draw.
Good afternoon. Yeah, bike lanes. Protected bike lanes. We've got them all through Encinitas. Didn't quite protect Ryan Curry last Saturday night, early Sunday morning. We now have a Ryan Curry welcome mat with his blood-soaked asphalt on our streets in Encinitas from the work that you guys do on creating protected bike lanes. Those green linears, those little curbs did absolutely nothing to protect his life. Did nothing. The blood stain on our road is still there. It's for us to look at every day until the next rainstorm and it rinses it or washes it away. You guys have blood on your asphalt, blood on your green paint, and you guys might as well accept the blood on your hands also.
Thank you. Your time has expired. We'll go next to the original draw, followed by Paul the Bold.
With your CEO delegated actions with the Warren versus City of San Diego case, I mean, it would probably behoove you to either get rid of Andre or have him resign. That would be best. And no matter how much you guys try to get people to bike, you're never going to change the climate by doing that. And people aren't going to just suddenly want to bike everywhere. The housing acceleration program, as we can see in your previous item earlier this morning, that it's not going to work because everything you guys do gets in your own way of being able to provide the housing, but that's the point. And no matter how much you guys sit here and get Transnet dollars, the more you push for the EVs, you're going to have less and less of those dollars. So to be equitable, you need to be charging these electric vehicle owners so that they can put money towards the streets that they're destroying with the heavy weight of their vehicles. And with the approval of the contracts with the inland trail bikeway system, you're putting a CCTV system in there, which is what China has. And the more surveillance you bring upon the people have to understand that what you're doing is trying to take total control of their movement and make sure that you're dictating what they cannot.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Paul the Bold, who will be followed by Consuelo. Paul, you're self-muted at the moment.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
The bike, high comedy. The theme is, where will the ride take you? And the answer is not that far if you stay on the incomplete inland rail trail built by SANDAG. Probably not that fast either if you need to get to work early. 8, the proposed contract awards. 14.2 million for 1.1 miles of bikeway. That is a ridiculous price. It is good, though, that the contingency fee is only 10%. Still, at 15 million, my advice would be to find a cheaper alternative. For instance, how much black chain link fence and gates, water quality swales do we need for a mere 1.1 miles? You propose a sole source contract with HNTB for the Baticodos double tracking. Would this be the same HNTB that screwed up the SR 125?
Thank you. Your time has expired. Our next speaker will be Consuelo, followed by Blair Beekman.
Again, it's refreshing to hear some of you finally echoing what we've concerned citizens have been saying for years. Government purposely creates the chaos to appear as the heroes. It's going to get even worse, so hold on tight. This board does not represent the millions in the county. They represent only themselves and keeping their jobs. Government will never solve a thing. It's all purposely flawed. Government rarely has money for funding social problems, yet when they need our money, they make sure they get it instantly. No penalties for government delays or incompetence. It's the taxpayers who are always penalized. Everything is getting worse. The system of government is purposely not working. Actually, it's purposely collapsing to make way for implementation of a new one where none of you will be of any use anymore, like pimps with their used up whores. That is why they are using you. You are puppets, setting their foundation, the blueprint of this new system. Despite the concerns and opposition of your own constituents, you continue being whores to the feds. Government is just a game. If we continue allowing it to be in total control, we...
Thank you. Your time has expired. Our next speaker is Blair Beekman, who will be the final public commenter.
Hi, Blair Beekman. I wanted to offer that, there seems to be excitement for the upcoming bike trail issues that's on consent today. I wanted to offer that the city of Davis, for about, 7 or 8 years now, since the beginning of the surveillance tech accountability ordinance ideas, they've been developing some really interesting ideas for surveillance tech good practices, best practices around wildlife trails, and having to do with data collection and surveillance tech on the trails. Check it out, Davis. It's by the city of Sacramento. They have good beginning examples that can help. And I also wanted to offer about the lagoon issues, double tracking issues. Really good words about bluff issues today, how to deal with seawall issues. That sort of responsible good thinking is needed for the double track issues. Good luck and good reason, good thinking for the future double track things. Thanks.
That concludes the public comments.
Thank you, Francesca. Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Mayor Minto, a second by Deputy Mayor Keim. Please vote. Has everybody voted? County Air. There we go. Coronado's gone.
That motion passes unanimously with those members present.
Very good. Okay, do we have any continued non-agenda comments from the public, Francesca?
Thank you, Vice Chair. We do. We'll start with Rita Clement, if you're still in the room, and then go to Alex Wong. I don't see Rita. Alex, if you're still with us, would you like to step up? Thank you.
As data researcher for RIDE-SD, I strongly support the automated people mover to connect downtown with the airport and beyond. The people mover is the ultra-frequent automated rail service that will transform San Diego into a transit city. From Copenhagen to Vancouver, automated rail systems have catalyzed sustainable transit-oriented developments. Last June, I visited Lille, France, which has a metropolitan area population less than half of San Diego counties, but their subway, which uses automated people mover technology, boasts over twice the ridership of San Diego's trolley. Why? Because of frequency. Trains in each direction came every 85 seconds during rush hour. That made the subway extremely convenient. I never had to hurry to catch the train because even if I missed the train, there'd be another train in 85 seconds. San Diegans deserve the same world-class convenience. It's time for SANDAG to join the automated rail revolution as soon as possible by building an elevated people mover, which will be much faster and cheaper to build than a tunneled option.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Mark, and after Mark will be Michael Brando.
Mark, yeah, you got public rail. Why, you put a metal detector on there, you could kill everyone's firstborn. There wouldn't be a damn thing they could do about it, especially with 10-round clips. And in the future soon, I'm sure the government doesn't want people to have that either. Pretty much like Europe. In fact, Europe is a model. NOR actually has people coming over from the UN showing us the ULEZ and ultra low emission zones and things they're doing there. And the people in France are literally being hit with rubber bullets and tear gas. And just whole cities of people, hundreds of thousands, protests you can't even imagine, that most of the people don't even know about here. Doesn't make any difference at all. They can't do a thing. They can't do anything anymore. They've been completely disarmed. Now, of course, right now, AI hasn't completely taken over yet. So theoretically, they could stop paying taxes and form their own government. But they don't know that. And once AI takes all our jobs, we'll be of no use at all to them, to the global elite.
Our next speaker will be Michael Brando, followed by Truth.
Truth reported that at the SANDAG retreat, Sean Elo was referring to some of the speakers that consistently come to meetings everywhere, including SANDAG, saying that they're a minority majority. And he was saying that they don't represent San Diego. And he also referred to these same public comment speakers, public comment all-stars, which he's called them before, as the privileged few, that they have the capacity and the ability to come to meetings. So it's interesting that this is the kind of contempt that is presented, and yet I've never heard any of you call out one another or call out Sean Elo for these kinds of remarks and others that make them. Why is that? Real quick, the book, The Final Pandemic, an Antidote to Medical Tyranny by Sam and Mark Bailey, Dr. Mark and Sam Bailey. Read it. Wake up about the last 4 years. Thanks.
Our next speaker will be Truth, who will be followed by Robert German.
Hey, it's Truth, the confirmed coolest thing at SANDAG. And I got tons of potential blackmail at the retreat. Just kidding. What happens at the retreat stays at the retreat. But I thought it went well. And no, not because y'all tried to buy me off with gifts and food, but because I heard a lot of attempts at understanding. The only other thing was, as what Michael just referenced, calling my people minority majority. But don't worry, I put him in his place on Monday. I said I'm proud to be a minority, and talked about how he's the privileged one with his mileage reimbursed, phone reimbursed, catered meals, doesn't have to stay until the end of the meeting, doesn't have to show up. Still gets paid, and he even gets to hear me speak. He's welcome, and you're all welcome. Anyways, the scaled down one-day event was all that was needed and saved taxpayers a ton of money compared to past inflated retreats. But there was no churro equity. Why was I not given a hot, fresh churro? That's why I'm never going to support SANDAG. Now, a public transit realities update. There were 3 shootings and 2 stabbings at 4 trolley stations and 1 Sprinter station within 2 weeks' time. That's what SANDAG pushes on children. And Lisa, you had great points today. Government and big corporations working together is called fascism.
Our next speaker will be Robert German. And after Robert, I will go to the folks online, starting with Paul the Bold.
Hi. Life after COVID includes air transportation in San Diego County. New data will show the best bang for the taxpayer's buck is swapping airports. Lindbergh's 633 acres for Miramar's 23,000 acres, which include 2 runways, 1 at 12,000 feet, 2 railroad tracks, room for trolley, bus, train, and aircraft maintenance and repair facilities, trolley, bus, train service to the lobby of a world airport, combine Montgomery and Gillespie Field at Miramar, free up valuable inner city land. The handout that I have, gave out this morning, of 2020 lists 5 speakers from San Diego Airport Authority. Question and answer session after Mr. Probst, I'll never get his name right, Vice President of Development of Airport Authority. The question to him was, what about moving to Miramar? Answer without hesitation, we will be there in 10 years. Mr. Provost then described how difficult it is to build an international airport on 633 acres.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Our next speaker will be Paul the Bold, who will be followed by Blair Beekman.
All up and down California, the coastal bluffs and infrastructure are crumbling or being eaten up by natural forces. The proposed tax will not be sufficient to cover repairs to the current track, tunnel, and the Lausanne corridor. A UCSD expert warns that anything within 100 yards of the sea will eventually be subject to erosion. Whether the problem is in Orange County, San Clemente, Del Mar, or elsewhere, the situation near the ocean and the Lausanne corridor as presently set up is not in your control. And that's why you need reserves, by the way. If SANDAG is serious about not interrupting service, it is more than prudent to find an inland route up the I-15 corridor or the Duluth area. It is time to abandon your false political pride and do what is best and will withstand the test of time and weather.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Our next speaker will be Blair Beekman, who will be followed by Consuelo.
Hi, Blair Beekman. Yeah, again, a reminder, just to thank you to be better considering irrigation before seawalls for the future of the bluff areas in North County. Look into the west side of Maui. They're having serious sea erosion issues at this time, sand erosion, beach erosion. It might make for interesting connections with yourselves, and to talk about the Lahaina area also would be of interest, I think. From that, also, again, Sacramento Davis by Sacramento is a really interesting place that's developed good accountability practices with tech and data collection for the future of their wildlife trails. They're a leader in the state on this issue, kind of. Check them out, interesting work. And good luck in working towards openness and accountability with community, a shared community process. That works towards peace at the local level. And when you do, that develops peace basically for the world and good examples, so they don't have to be at war. They can see our good examples. Thank you.
I think your next speaker is Consuelo, who will be followed by the original draw.
Okay, so what I didn't get to finish saying was that these puppets are setting the foundation of the blueprint of this new system, despite the concerns and opposition of their own constituents. They continue being whores to the feds. Government is just a game. If we continue allowing it to be in total control, we all lose. It doesn't have to be this way. Don't prolong this sick game. Way too many are suffering at the hands of this government.
I think our final speaker will be the original draw. You can go ahead.
Did anyone watch the February 2nd audit committee where Chair Zito pushed back on one of the public audit committee members that they weren't going to investigate Lauren's claim because she didn't file a whistleblower hotline claim with the SANDAG OIPA office? That's ridiculous and complete avoidance to continue the corruption and cover up. A claim was filed with the San Diego Superior Court and you aren't going to investigate that? Doesn't that outweigh any SANDAG OIPA filing? What are you so scared of finding with a whistleblower investigation? That the board is protecting an unethical CFO? The items mentioned in her claim have been admitted to during board meetings by Andre and only after the details were exposed by the claim. Everyone that is involved in that termination should be ashamed of themselves and is responsible for not taking their appropriate action and looking into why a person just doing her job to expose significant issues was immediately terminated with nothing in her personal profile. In her file. It sounds like to me that you fired the wrong accountant. When is the board going to demonstrate that they hold management's unethical behavior accountable? Something needs to be done. Good thing there's a total investigation at the next audit committee meeting on Tuesday.
That concludes the public commenters.
Very good. That concludes our meeting. And we will see you all April 12th at 10 a.m.